If you grew up watching anime, you definitely know the golden rule for a protagonist. Shout a lot, train until you're practically dead, and carry the unstoppable dream of becoming the best in the world. Just look at Naruto wanting to become Hokage, or Goku constantly searching for stronger opponents. We love this classic formula of pure dedication and hard work. But what if the story's great hero wanted to win the most dangerous tournament on the planet simply so he could sleep in peace and be a total slacker for the rest of his life? That wonderful subversion of expectations is exactly what defines Shaman King. It's a series that marked the childhood of many people on TV, mixing ghost battles with an unforgettable soundtrack, yet staying far away from the traditional cliché. Here, we follow Yo Asakura, an extremely laid-back kid who gets dragged by his tyrannical fiancée into a deadly competition. The story delivers unusual violence, bizarre spirit possessions, and rivalries forged through constant beatdowns involving ghosts. So today's video focuses on Shaman King, an epic journey where the power of friendship works, but a good round of family therapy would probably be a lot less painful.
I'm Hiro, but everyone calls me Trey Racer because I'm a big-time board head. A who? A who?
We meet Morty, a pint-sized student carrying the weight of being the only person with a brain in this town. He decides to take a shortcut through the local cemetery because apparently he's never seen a horror movie in his life. Amidst tombstones and mist, he finds a headphone-wearing kid named Yo, who's stargazing with everyone. But when Morty realizes everyone is actually a horde of floating ghosts, he screams like a little girl and bolts, proving his masculinity is as stunted as his stature.
Say hi.
The next day, Morty tries to explain he's seeing dead people, but his classmates just mock him, which is fair. To no one's shock, the new transfer student is Yo, who plays dumb. Morty toggles stalker mode and follows the kid all week, failing miserably at uncovering anything useful. Persistent and lacking a social life, he returns to the cemetery with a camera, only to run into Rio and his gang of generic delinquents, who compensate for a lack of fatherly affection with ridiculous banana-shaped pompadours. In an act of pure class, Rio breaks the gravestone of a samurai named Amidamaru. When he spots Morty, he vents his existential frustration by beating the shrimp until he's more crumpled than scrap paper. The next day, a battered Morty watches as Yo finally admits he sees ghosts, dragging the little guy back to the cemetery for a reckoning. To ensure Morty doesn't flee, Yo ties him to a tree, likely fulfilling some weird fetish, and waits for the gang. When Rio arrives, Yo summons the spirit of Amidamaru, who is pissed because they trashed his home. Yo then performs spirit unity, allowing the samurai to possess his body completely. The result is a one-sided slaughter where Yo slices Rio's phallic pompadour with a single strike, humiliating the thug in front of his goons.
Stories before. I never knew anyone could have that kind of power.
After the idiots flee, Yo fixes the headstone with cheap glue and Morty realizes he's now best friends with a shaman and a ghost, sealing his fate as the useless narrator of this story. Morty and Yo are hanging out at the cemetery, where Yo tries to convince Amidamaru to become his guardian ghost, basically asking the ghost to go steady, but the samurai plays hard to get, claiming he's waiting for someone. Morty, ever the nerd, mentions that Amidamaru killed 1,000 men and is known as a monster, but Yo doesn't care. He felt a warm, fuzzy feeling when the spirit possessed him the night before. Meanwhile, Rio is whining around town about his butchered hair. Yo and Morty visit the local museum to see Amidamaru's sword, the Sword of Light, and discover it cries at night.
That could explain the tears. You know, if you'd like.
They stake out the place and realize the one crying is actually Mosuke, a master smith and Amidamaru's best friend, a plot twist anyone with 2 brain cells saw coming. Mosuke tells a tragic 600-year-old tale. They worked for a jerk of a feudal lord who ordered Mosuke's death. Amidamaru told his friend to flee and promised to wait for a new sword. Ultimately, Amidamaru slaughtered an entire army and died of exhaustion waiting for his friend, proving he's the king of flaking. Mosuke can't rest in peace because he never delivered the blade. Yo, always happy to lend out his body, lets Mosuke possess him to restore the rusted old sword using his smithing skills. After an intense hammering session, they take the blade to the cemetery. Amidamaru is shocked to see the restored Sword of Light and realizes his friend finally kept his promise.
Is that? Can it be? Mosuke's finest sword?
Yo delivers the news that Mosuke has moved on to the afterlife, finally setting Amidamaru free. But as they're leaving, Rio reappears, thirsty for revenge and likely more humiliation. He attacks with his wooden sword, but Amidamaru, now touched by Yo's character, rushes back, possesses him again, and parries the strike. Ryo is defeated once more, proving that persistence doesn't always lead to perfection. Sometimes it just leads to more beatings.
Say goodbye, punk! Say goodbye to you! That worked for me?
In the end, Amidamaru agrees to be Yo's personal ghost. Morty is heading home when he spots a mysterious shaman in the cemetery with an aura that screams trouble. He tries to warn Yo, but our protagonist is more interested in eating ice cream and acting like he doesn't have spiritual bills to pay. Yo even buys ice cream for Amidamaru, treating the ghost like a living Tamagotchi. Later, Morty crosses paths with the mysterious shaman again at a traffic light. The lunatic, named Tao Len, decides to ignore traffic laws and slices a truck in half with his giant glaive because apparently, waiting for a green light is for the weak.
Who are you? I am Len of the Tao family.
He stares at Morty and declares he will be the Shaman King, leaving the shrimp traumatized. At school, Morty hysterically recounts the event, but Yo maintains his signature dead fish expression, figuring that if Len sees spirits, he must be a nice guy. This flawed logic is tested when they run into Len on the street. Len, the quintessential edgy rival who dresses better than the protagonist, tells Yo he's unnecessary and schedules a beatdown at a scenic stargazing spot. Meanwhile, Ryo and his gang are at the cemetery being useless as usual, until Len arrives and decides to take out the trash. He beats the entire gang in the blink of an eye and is about to finish Ryo when Yo arrives to save the day. Len starts preaching that ghosts are just tools, objects to be used and discarded, which pisses Yo off because he treats his ghosts with love and care. The fight begins, and Len reveals his ghost, Ba-san, a giant Chinese warrior who makes Amidamaru look like a toy. Len uses 100% spirit unity, an ability Yo didn't even know existed, and proceeds to pummel the protagonist mercilessly. Len's golden Chinese slash is so brutal it breaks Yo's wooden sword, cancels his possession, and leaves our hero sprawled on the ground, bleeding and humbled. Morty watches, as useless as ever, realizing the power of friendship might not be enough against a 2-ton glaive to the face. While the protagonist rests in the hospital, pretending that almost dying was part of the plan, Amidamaru sulks in the corner like a dramatic emo, blaming himself for the beatdown. Morty bursts in with news no one asked for. The Pompadour gang saved the day. In this recovery setting, Yo drops a truth bomb, revealing in a flashback that he only agreed to train because his grandfather said that if he became Shaman King, he could spend his whole life slacking off. Morty and Amidamaru are shocked by such spiritual mediocrity, and even Ba-san, who was spying like a ghostly pervert, rushes off to tell his master. Across town, Len remembers his father wants to restore the Tao family honor, which basically translates to kill everyone. Ba-san leaks the hospital's location, and Len decides guided tours are for wimps. Yo tries to sneak out to avoid trouble but runs right into his Chinese stalker at the hospital doors. The confrontation is inevitable. Len attacks with the fury of someone rejected on Tinder, but Yo blocks it all. When Len snaps the protagonist's staff in half, Yo smiles like an idiot and thanks him, saying the size is now perfect for a sword, proving it's not the size that matters, it's how you use it. But Len, being a walking shonen villain cliché, reveals he was only using 30% of his power. He lets out a manic laugh and rams the butt of his glaive into Yo's gut. The protagonist retreats into the trees to strategize, or just to cry in private. Len slices the trees apart, mocking Yo's bond with his ghost and calling Amidamaru a tool. The hate speech continues. Yo takes a beating, his possession breaks, and he hits the dirt. Len moves in for the kill, but Amidamaru refuses to abandon the sinking ship. With the power of platonic man-on-ghost love, Yo triggers 100% spirit unity.
How could his power have increased that much?
Len launches his ultimate attack, but Yo counters with the celestial slash, knocking out the Chinese rich kid before passing out himself from a total lack of mana, stamina, and dignity. Morty drags his friend's body back to the hospital while a mysterious girl walks through the mist, ready to wreck whatever piece is left. Yo barely wakes up from his beatdown-induced coma before a visitor arrives. An unknown girl enters the room complaining about his laziness and prophesying a painful future. Morty, perpetually confused, asks who this crazy person is, only to discover she is Anna, Yo's fiancée. The shock nearly makes Morty transcend.
And I go way back.
I am his wife.
Anna wastes no time. She sends the shrimp to get her a soda and binds Amidamaru with a 108-bead rosary, proving she's into spiritual bondage. She makes it clear, Yo will become Shaman King whether he likes it or not, because her dream is to be the first lady of the spirit world and live a life of luxury on her husband's dime. Reverse feminism at its finest. Training begins, and it's basically gourmet physical torture. Anna forces Yo to run 50 laps with lead weights strapped to his body, while Morty becomes the household maid, scrubbing floors and cooking dinner. If Yo tries to slack off, the house spirits snitch on him to the boss lady. Meanwhile, we get some gratuitous fan service of Len taking a bath until his older sister, Tao Jun, invades the bathroom to say hi. The Tao family clearly doesn't grasp the concept of privacy.
Trying to wash off the failure, little brother?
Be my guest.
Back at Hell on Earth, Yo runs until he faints, gets up, and runs again in a loop of suffering that would make marathoners weep. At night, June decides to visit the boy who beat up her little brother. She arrives in a suspicious black van, packed with coffins and talismans. While Yo and Morty try to catch their breath in the park, 3 spirit hunters surround them. Yo drops his training weights, feeling very Rock Lee, and with the help of Amidamaru and Anna, who showed up to ensure her investment doesn't die, he defeats the zombies with ridiculous ease. Jun flees in the black van, promising revenge. At home, Yo's reward for surviving is Anna doubling his training weights. As Yo cries while cooking dinner, Jun promises her brother she will crush the protagonist, proving that grudges run in the family. The slave labor training continues in the park, with Yo running and Morty acting like his sidekick parrot. They pass a movie poster for Lee Pylon, and Morty has a nerdgasm, explaining that the guy was a kung fu master who died mysteriously, his body vanishing at the funeral. Yo notes that dictator Anna would never pay for them to see a movie, but a black van passes with a smiling June inside. Never a good sign. Morty begs to see his Dead Idols movie so much that Anna, in a rare display of mercy, or boredom, agrees to go, though she comes along to ensure no one has too much fun. After the movie, hyped up on martial arts, they exit the theater and are met by an army of spirit hunters controlled by June. Yo grabs a random pipe, uses spirit unity, and beats the extras in seconds, thinking he's hot stuff. That's when Jun reveals her ace, the actual Lee Pylon, in rotting flesh and bone. Morty goes into shock seeing his childhood hero turned into a necromancer's puppet. Jun tries to steal Amidamaru, Yo refuses, and the brawl begins. However, fighting a zombie kung fu master is not the same as beating up pompadour thugs. Yo charges in to break the talisman on the zombie's forehead, but takes a nunchuck beating that makes him question his life choices. Morty tries to wake his unconscious friend, but Jun warns him that a normal human can't tank Pylon's hits. Anna, cold and calculating, explains to Morty that the true villain is the girl controlling the corpse. Morty starts crying, realizing they killed his idol just to turn him into a rich girl's toy. Yo stands up, battered, and gives a motivational speech claiming Pylon's body still has feelings. He asks the zombie what he thinks, and the corpse sheds a single tear from its one good eye in a moment of absurd Mexican soap opera drama. Jun ignores the puppet's crying and orders the kill. Pylon hesitates for a second, but dark magic wins, and he goes back to pummeling Yo, disarming him. Amidamaru apologizes for not having a decent sword. Jun mocks their poverty and tells Morty to run if he doesn't want to die too. The shrimp bolts, screaming, leaving his friend to take the beating alone. True friendship right there. While the heady shrimp, Morty runs for his life, leaving his friend to be a zombie's punching bag. He decides the best combat strategy is to borrow a wooden sword from a random biker gang. Obviously, diplomacy fails, and Morty gets beaten with the efficiency he deserves, until Rio and his gravity-defying pompadour show up to save the day and humiliate the extras. Meanwhile, Yo continues to be tenderized by undead Bruce Lee's fists, refusing to hand over his samurai ghost to June. When Morty finally delivers the wooden sword, he gives a cliché speech about wanting to help his hero, but in practice, he just handed a stick to someone fighting a superhuman corpse.
More like halfway and back again. You know what? That shiner makes you look pretty tough.
Yo enters serious mode and charges with his new toy, parrying strikes with a dexterity that leaves June surprised. He uses an unpronounceable Buddhist strike to shred the talisman on the zombie's forehead, waking Pylon from his 17-year beauty sleep. The confused corpse sees his own movie poster, punches a glass pane, and realizes he feels no pain because, surprise, he's dead.
Should have felt pain. Why am I not bleeding? June?
An existential crisis hits hard when he remembers the Tao family ordered his hit, and the zombie goes berserk mode, focused on crushing June. But just as he's about to turn the girl into pate, Yo blocks the attack and drops the pearl that revenge solves nothing, proving he's the only shonen protagonist who tries therapy mid-fight. Since the situation is spiraling and the zombie is foaming with rage, Anna, the true leash holder of everyone there, decides to intervene. She summons the spirit of Pylon's master, an old man named Shaolin, and fuses him into Yo's broken body. The result is a pedagogical beatdown, where the master teaches the student that he's weak because he's cranky. Yo, possessed by the elderly man, dodges everything with the grace of a ballerina and finishes the zombie with a shadow strike, sending Pylon to the floor to reflect on his afterlife choices.
He's returning to his original form. His true spirit.
In the end, we get the touching moment where master and student make spiritual peace. In an absurd twist of Stockholm Syndrome, Pylon decides to remain June's puppet, promising to pursue his dreams even as a gray-skinned walking corpse. June agrees to keep him without the control talismans, and Rio stands there drooling, impressed by the horror show. And of course, the voyeur Tao Len watched everything from a rooftop, promising not to let Yo ruin his plans. Because stalking boys fighting is apparently his hobby, Rio decides being a delinquent with a pompadour doesn't pay the bills and sets his mind on becoming a shaman. He takes his gang to Yo's place, and Anna, seeing an opportunity for cheap, unpaid labor, agrees to train him if he passes a test. The test, surprisingly, is cooking a banquet. Thus, Rio is promoted to official household maid, scrubbing floors and cleaning toilets while swearing this is high-level spiritual training. Morty and his henchmen can only watch with pity as the big guy is exploited under Anna's non-existent labor laws. Across town, in the rich and troubled sector, June talks to her psychopathic brother Len, saying she's tired of playing dolls with spirits. But her redemption is short-lived because someone named Ginny appears. She's there to kill Yo, and when June refuses her help and sends Pylon to attack, the zombie gets wrecked by Ginny's spirit, You Guy, proving his movie was a box office flop for a reason. Len, in a fit of brotherly protection, threatens the woman and kicks her out, but she leaves with the smile of someone who's going to stir trouble anyway. Back at the protagonist's house, Yo ducks out of housework to run with Morty and finds Rio grocery shopping for dinner because he's now the perfect housewife. Yo gives Rio a new wooden sword since the other one turned into sawdust, but the sweet moment is interrupted by Ginny and her spirit. Yo merges with Amidamaru and uses Rio's new sword to block the attacks, while Morty, with his keen sense for the obvious, notes the enemy spirit looks like Pylon. Yugai uses smoke, clones, and kunai, turning the street into a low-budget ninja movie. Yo, tired of the games, shatters the villain's sunglasses with a punch and finishes her with a spinning slash that sends Ginny into orbit.
Way to go! Celestial Slash!
Len, continuing his stalking streak, watches from behind a tree, probably taking fashion notes. The group catches their breath after the fight when the real villain of the story appears, Anna, who is pissed that they're late for dinner. Yo and Morty are heading home when they trip over a snowman and a hobo passed out in the middle of the street. Since Yo has a soft heart and zero survival instinct, he revives the guy by shoving meat into his mouth and drags him home. The guy wakes up, introduces himself as Horo, a ridiculous name that Yo finds hilarious, and tells a sob story about losing his luggage in Tokyo. Anna, her exploitation radar pinging, lets him stay provided he obeys her orders, which leaves the snow country hick both excited and terrified when he finds out Yo already has a fiancé. Horo reveals he's an ecological shaman who wants to create a giant field of plants for some dwarf spirits called Minusians, a dream that sounds like a hallucination from eating bad mushrooms. While Yo trains and nearly dies of exhaustion, Horo takes over as the household Cinderella, umbrella, washing and ironing under Anna's sadistic gaze. The piece ends when Ryo reports the guest has vanished, and Amidamaru tracks the scent of trouble. They find Horo in the street using a snowboard to fight off a pack of spirit hunters hunting for Yo. In a demonstration that extreme sports can be lethal, Horo fuses his spirit Kori into his board and slides across the asphalt, freezing the zombies with an unpronounceable move that leaves Ryo jaw-dropped.
It's almost as good as Yo. He might act like an idiot, but he sure doesn't fight.
After turning the undead into popsicles, they discover Horo's gear wasn't stolen. It was seized by the police because he left it in the middle of the road blocking traffic, proving that intelligence isn't his primary stat. He makes a dramatic goodbye, claims he's leaving, but in the next scene, he's already back in Yo's living room, decided to live there for free forever, making the vein in Anna's forehead pulse with rage. Domestic life at the inn operates under a reign of terror. Anna decides that if her stomach growls, someone must suffer, so she dispatches Yo and the garden gnome Morty to buy food. Meanwhile, Ryo is in the middle of an existential crisis, realizing his career as a shaman is about as promising as his love life. To cheer up their depressed boss, his gang has the brilliant idea of taking him to an abandoned bowling alley, the perfect place to catch tetanus and depression. Yo and Morty pass by and decide to investigate the lights, but Ryo, acting like a teenager dodging his mom, runs to hide in the ladies' room. Yes, the gang leader, a 6'6" cabinet of a man, is cowering in the girls' bathroom while a red-eyed lizard watches with judgment. While everyone looks for the coward, Amidamaru catches the scent of a vengeful spirit who hasn't bathed in centuries. Yo decides to head home and snitch to Anna, leaving the alley behind. Alone in the bathroom, Ryo looks in the mirror and sees a spirit who decides that muscular and virgin body is the perfect vessel for a joyride. Ryo's henchmen hear suspicious screams coming from the bathroom, but when they find their boss, he's acting weirder than usual, declaring it a day of rebirth and demanding the location of the legendary Sword of Light. Meanwhile, Morty decides to play detective and follows the gang to the museum, where Ryo decides the best way to show dominance is to stab one of his own friends. He reveals himself as Toka Gero the bandit and announces he will kill Amidamaru with his own sword, proving that irony is this spirit's forte. Little Morty, whose only function in the plot is to observe and get screwed, is caught red-handed and becomes an instant hostage. When Yo and Anna sense their mascot is missing, they rush out only to find a possessed Ryo at their doorstep. Toka Gero finally shows himself, ready to collect a 600-year-old debt, proving he's the kind of guy who holds a grudge even against someone who stole his lunch in preschool. Toka Gero is foaming with rage inside Ryo's body, screaming about revenge, but the situation gets awkward when Amidamaru admits he killed so many people he doesn't even remember who this irrelevant lizard is. Offended by being forgotten, Toka Gero threatens the useless hostage Morty and demands Yo and the samurai fuse for battle. Yo complies with spirit unity, but Ryo blocks the attack with the ease of someone playing on tutorial mode using the stolen Sword of Light. The bandit then uses a technique that nearly turns Yo into mincemeat, leaving Anna worried enough to coldly list the options. Either Toka Gero kills her ghost, they break Ryo's body, or they destroy the precious sword. We get a tragic flashback of Amidamaru and his favorite smith Mosuke, forging the Sword of Light with the power of friendship and manly tears, naming the blade Spring Rain, proving that even samurais have the feels.
Why are you crying?
Back in the present, Toka Gero realizes he's at a disadvantage and decides to do the unthinkable. He points the sword at Ryo's own neck, threatening a double murder-suicide if anyone moves. The Pompadour gang tries to appeal to his sentimentality, reminiscing about the good times, but the bandit's spirit couldn't care less. Amidamaru and Yo make the executive decision that it's better to have a living friend than an intact sword. They attack with full force, shattering the historical blade into tiny pieces. With his plan foiled and no hostages, Toka Gero expects to be exorcised via beatdown, but Yo, demonstrating his total lack of self-preservation, asks if the lonely spirit wants to be his friend. He offers his own body to Toka Gero, leaving everyone, including the villain, shocked by the audacity of an invitation that sounds strangely suggestive. Toka Gero accepts and enters Yo. For a moment, it looks like he's going to slit his own throat with the shards of the sword, but the protagonist's idiotic kindness breaks the bandit's bandit's frozen heart. He starts to cry, realizing he can't kill someone so stupid and gentle. He abandons Yo's body, admitting that having friends might not be as bad as being a lonely loser for 6 centuries. Ryo's spiritual hangover lasts for days. While the gang waits in the living room, Horo gets out of the shower and catches an unprovoked beating from Anna just for breathing the same air as her. When the Pompadour finally wakes up, he realizes he can now see Amidamaru in HD, meaning that being possessed by a vengeful lizard has officially unlocked his shamanic powers. But instead of celebrating, Ryo enters a state of post-possession depression and starts a compulsive cleaning spree around the house to wash away his sins. Ryo's friends, being the geniuses they are, decide that the only cure for spiritual trauma is girls. They head out to pick up women, but get rejected so violently that their only logical solution is to cross-dress and invade the boss's bathhouse. The sight of these delinquent drag queens is so traumatizing that Ryo decides to throw in the towel and move back to the sticks. To prevent his early retirement, Anna decides to summon Mosuke, the ghost blacksmith, and shove him inside Ryo's body. Now, with 2 different men having been inside him in less than a week, Ryo uses his blacksmithing skills to forge and repair the Sword of Light. The manual labor reignites the fire in Ryo's heart. He hands over the repaired blade and declares that being a shaman is the coolest thing ever. But the peace is short-lived when a mysterious drifter appears on the roof, tossing feathers that turn into spirits. Yo rejects the actual sword and decides to test out a weapon that's just a hilt, because apparently, size isn't everything. Morty thinks it's a joke, but Yo channels his energy and creates a massive mana blade, proving he can get the job done even without the physical hardware. The drifter reveals himself as Mickey Hisa, Yo's deadbeat dad, who showed up just to say, "Hi, bye, and good luck."
Greetings, Ryo. I think you'll make a very good shaman.
Later, Ryo decides to hit the road to find himself, leaving Morty behind. While driving and staring at the sky, he spots a jacked-up shooting star. Yo's dad reappears in the passenger seat to explain that it's the signal that the shaman fight has begun. Basically, the tutorial is over, and the PvP server is now live. While the trio of misfits walks to school, a masked stalker watches from afar with the energy of someone who should be on a restraining order list. Morty tries to have a serious talk about the upcoming death tournament, but Yo is too busy being the spiritual stoner he is to care. The stalker, who clearly doesn't have a job, pops out of nowhere to invite the protagonist to the shaman fight and sets a romantic date for when the star calls. It's basically a mystical pyramid scheme. Later, while everyone stares at the sky like they're waiting for the Wi-Fi signal to return, a shooting star passes and Yo finally realizes the time for the showdown has come.
Did you see that star? Was that the...
He meets the masked man in the forest, who reveals himself as Silva, one of the 10 officials of the Dobi tribe, who apparently only has the budget for 1 outfit. The rule is simple. Yo just needs to land a single hit on him within 10 minutes. Sounds easy, but when Yo activates his fusion mode and charges, Silva blocks everything with the ease of someone swatting flies, mocking the kid for not even being able to touch him. Yo tries repeatedly, but Silva blocks everything using his own spirits, revealing that he's not using basic amateur possession, but rather materializing his Furioku energy to create an oversoul. He explains that only an oversoul can defeat another, meaning Yo needs to learn how to manifest his power outward, rather than just letting a ghost enter him, something he was already doing way too frequently. While Silva's spirits are basically bullying the protagonist, Yo finally has an epiphany. He realizes he needs to shove Amidamaru inside an object. Without a second thought, he grabs his sword and inserts the spirit into it, creating a glowing blade of energy. Now that he's learned how to put the right thing in the right hole, Yo goes for the final strike. The collision of energy is so intense that he manages to slash Silva's headband, which counts as a victory in this game of arbitrary rules.
He qualified.
What?
The official approves his performance, hands the boy a glorified pager called an oracle bell, and vanishes, saying it's all the will of the Great Spirit, leaving Yo passed out on the ground after spending all his mana on his first try. Yo and Horo decide to strengthen their male bonds by taking a bath together, where the only thing growing is the tension of knowing they'll face each other in the first round. This homoerotic harmony is interrupted when a girl breaks into the house and mistakes Morty for a pet Pokemon. She's Pilika, the Eskimo's little sister, and she's furious furious to find out her brother is sleeping with the enemy. She drags Horo out of the house to train and live in the forest like a hobo, since hotels cost money they don't have. On the night before the fight, Yo maintains the irritating calm of someone who's had too much mushroom tea, while Horo is having a full-blown anxiety attack. On the day of the match, Anna dresses Yo in a hand-sewn uniform, proving that she hits him, but she also cares. The fight begins, and Horo wastes no time, attacking with everything he's got while Yo just dodges. The Eskimo tries to freeze the protagonist with Corey's icy breath, but Yo slices through the ice like butter. Realizing normal attacks won't work, Horo decides to release all his white liquid at once. He creates a massive avalanche and surfs it toward Yo, determined to bury his friend.
All of my Foryoku now!
Morty screams in panic, but Yo decides to face the white mass head-on, taking the full load to the face. It looks like the end, but Yo emerges from the snow intact, proving he can handle any pressure, and with a single strike, he shatters Horo's oversoul. The protagonist takes the win, leaving the Dobie officials shocked at his ability to take a beating and keep smiling. Later, Pilika cries over her brother's defeat, but Anna, with her usual delicacy, reminds her that the scoring system allows for one loss, so the dream isn't over yet. To celebrate the defeat and the potential head trauma, Yo and Horo head back to the bath to admire the moon and make promises to meet in the finals, completely ignoring the fact that they almost killed each other 5 minutes ago. It's the power of raw, naked male friendship. While Silva and Colin try to make a living selling trinkets, they worry about Yo's next opponent, a guy named Faust the Eighth. Colin suggests the kid should just quit because apparently, workplace safety for shamans is non-existent. Meanwhile, Pilika invades the Asakura house again to drag Horo off for more forced training, swearing she'll never forgive Yo for ruining her dreams, though nobody actually cares about her opinion. In the bath, which seems to be the only place where conversations happen in this show, Anna reveals via the magic pager that the next opponent is indeed the crazy necromancer. They arrive at the battlefield, a graveyard, because subtlety isn't this anime's strong suit. Silva tries to convince Anna to make Yo forfeit, warning her that Faust killed his last opponent and that the terrain is perfect for him. Anna, obviously, ignores all safety warnings and says her fiancé will win, treating his life like a high-risk investment. Faust appears, looking like he hasn't slept since the last century, and starts explaining that he wants to conquer death. Morty, ever the smart aleck, says that's impossible, which irritates the goth doctor. As punishment for his insolence, Faust summons an army of skeletons that grab the little guy. While Yo is being beaten from behind by the spirit of Nurse Eliza, Faust decides it's time for an anatomy lesson and begins a procedure on Morty right there, without anesthesia. The Mad Doctor uses his shamanic abilities to perform an improvised surgery. Yo watches his friend suffer and finally loses his usual calm, shattering the skeletons holding him with an explosion of fury. Faust just summons more Bone Boys to bury the protagonist, but Yo uses his oversoul to burst out of the pile, declaring he won't forgive the man who is playing doctor with his best friend's guts. The piece is over, and Yo is ready to commit some reverse medical malpractice.
Into the Spirit Sword! And now it's time for Faust the Eighth to become Faust the Last!
As our hippie protagonist tries to attack the goth doctor, he realizes that skeletons are like cockroaches. You kill one, and 20 more show up. Meanwhile, Faust continues to open Morty up like a difficult bag of chips, proving his Hippocratic oath expired last century. Silva, the useless official who's only there to narrate the obvious, comments that Yo's battery is running low, turning the fight into a one-sided massacre, where the undead Nurse Eliza treats the kid like a punching bag. Faust then decides it's time for the mandatory villain tragic backstory and reveals he wants to become Shaman King to resurrect his wife, because apparently Tinder doesn't exist in the necromancer world. After a flashback showing that modern medicine lost to a burglar with bad aim, we discover Faust turned into an obsessive maniac who carries his beloved's bones around. Anna, ever cold and calculating, explains to the idiot narrator Silva that Yo is fighting to save the little guy because he was the first human being with enough patience to be his friend. But things get ugly when Yo, in a moment of pure lack of judgment, decides to call Eliza a doll. Huge mistake. Calling someone's dead waifu a doll is a death wish. Faust completely tilts, goes berserk, and summons a 20-ton calcium giant because milk is good for the bones and for murder. Yo loses his oversoul and becomes a punching bag, about to be crushed by giant osteoporosis. The judge tries to intervene, but he's too slow. When all seems lost and Yo is ready to become graveyard fertilizer, Tao Len appears out of nowhere. With a single kick, he destroys the giant skeleton, proving that calcium is no match for rival protagonist energy.
You're lucky I was around, Yo.
The pointy-haired kid saves the day, not out of kindness, but because he has a toxic possessiveness complex and declared that only he has the right to beat Yo up. Faust, humiliated and out of mana, grabs his wife's remains and bails, making it clear that love hurts, but a kick from a Chinese boy hurts more. Morty wakes up in the hospital, all stitched up, and rushes to see his spiritual boyfriend. But Yo decides to play the tragic Mexican soap opera hero and ends the friendship right there. He tells Morty he can't hang out with him anymore, and the little guy runs off crying, creating the most dramatic and unnecessary breakup scene of the season. Anna, who has the emotional sensitivity of a door, comments that she didn't know Yo could lie like that, while the boy explains he almost died and doesn't want to see his friend become a jigsaw puzzle again. Since Yo already lost one fight by forfeit thanks to the crazy doctor, the next loss means game over. Depressed and wandering the streets like a heartbroken simp, Morty runs into Rio, the delinquent with the gravity-defying pompadour. After sharing their sorrows, they decide the best solution is to stalk the protagonist all the way to Izumo on a road trip, followed by a suspicious red car that screams ambush. Meanwhile, Yo arrives at Grandpa Yome's house and discovers that to get strong fast, he needs to enter the Yomi hole. Grandpa warns him that the training involves spending 7 days in total darkness, seeing, hearing, and feeling nothing but his own fear, and if he fails, he dies. Yo agrees to enter his grandfather's dark, tight hole, promising to eat something delicious when he comes out. On the road, Rio and Morty stop to rest, and the delinquent reveals that Morty's place is by Yo's side, a line that sounds strangely romantic, but the bromance moment is interrupted by Ellie and Millie, two generic shamans who attack Rio.
Hello! Be still, my beating heart!
The pompadour surprises everyone by revealing that he's now a shaman too. He defeats the extras and even gets a compliment from Yo's deadbeat dad, Mickey Hisa, proving that even an idiot with a wooden sword can be useful. Horo wins a fight off-screen because nobody cares, and his sister tells him to train harder. Meanwhile, the dynamic duo of stalkers, Morty and Rio, arrive in Izumo and run into Temra, a shy girl defending the temple with two questionable-looking sloth spirits, Ponchi and Conchi. Rio, who shoots his shot at anything that moves, tries to hit on her immediately but gets rejected and takes a kick to the shins from the spirits. The simp life isn't easy. Temra reveals she already likes someone, and surprise level 0 for the audience. She's a simp for Yo. Before the jealousy fight can escalate, Anna arrives to lay down the law. Everyone gathers to hear Grandpa explain that Yo is in the final stages of his training in the hole. The weather forecast says the protagonist is coming out today, so everyone rushes to the cave exit. But of course, Ellie and Millie, the shamans who just won't stop embarrassing themselves, show up to spawn kill him at the exit. They try to destroy the entrance, but Anna throws the sword of light in their faces because aggression is her love language. At that exact moment, Yo emerges from the darkness, dirty, tired, but with the glow in his eyes of someone who just leveled up 50 times in 1 week. He grabs the sword, activates a new oversoul that looks like a premium toy, and defeats both enemies with a single strike, making them look like a mobile game tutorial. Grandpa is proud, Anna gives a compliment, a miracle, and Yo and Morty patch up their friendship with that "I can't live without you" vibe. The episode ends with everyone heading to dinner to eat Temra's food, who remains the official cook and third wheel of the weird polyamorous relationship forming in this house. While the audience waits anxiously for blood, Silva and Cullen waste screen time eating lunch and gossiping about who has the higher power level, like washed-up esports commentators. On the other side of town, Yo is busy doing absolutely nothing but listening to music and ignoring reality, until Anna, the domestic dictator, sends him to bed because the kid needs to be rested for his beating tomorrow. Meanwhile, Tao Len is sweating buckets in a frenetic training session, proving he compensates for his lack of personality with excessive physical effort, while Basun, his guardian spirit who acts more like a worried nanny, begs his master to rest before he has a stroke. Judgment Day arrives and the ragtag crew heads to the graveyard, because apparently, kids fighting with ghosts only counts if it's on desecrated ground. Morty is having a panic attack, Anna has her usual look of boredom, and Yo looks like he took a horse tranquilizer. Len arrives with the arrogance of someone who bought the premium battle pass, and the fight begins. They pull out their oversouls, which are basically glorified action figures made of spiritual energy. Len attacks with the fury of a rejected incel, but Yo dodges with the swagger of someone who doesn't care about life. Silva, watching from the sidelines, notices the raw power difference is ridiculous, but Yo compensates by using his brain, something Len clearly left at home today. The fight turns into a humiliating loop where Len creates a thick, giant oversoul to penetrate the enemy's defense, but Yo, in a surgical maneuver, breaks the Chinese boy's toy over and over again. Every time his great and veiny power is destroyed, Len gets angrier and wastes more energy, falling into the psychological trap of being a hot-headed idiot. Meanwhile, in China, Tao Jun tries to convince her father, who looks like a rotten meat transformer, to leave her little brother alone, claiming he's a good boy deep down despite his regular murder attempts. The episode cuts back to the graveyard where Len, foaming at the mouth, decides to charge the stoner protagonist one more time. The graveyard battle reaches critical levels of stupidity as Yo and Len decide to see who can pass out first. Silva, the judge who is clearly rooting for the protagonist, notes that Yo is saving spiritual gas while Len is burning the whole tank to compensate for his ego. The Chinese boy, refusing to accept that size doesn't matter, fuses Basun's horse with his actual horse, creating a turbocharged mount to try and run over his opponent.
We will ride to victory!
Meanwhile, at the Chinese Adams family mansion, Len's dad decides the best way to educate his daughter June is by locking her in the dungeon, proving that toxic parenting is hereditary. Back at the Shaman cockfight, Tao Len screams that he's invincible, but Yo creates a colossal oversoul, proving he also knows how to play the who has the bigger sword game. The two collide with full force, exploding everything in a premature mana ejaculation, and both run out of energy simultaneously.
Counter-strike!
Silva, not knowing what to do, declares a technical tie and approves both for the next round because the plot needs to move forward. The post-fight celebration happens at Yo's house, where Len experiences alien concepts called friendship and food that doesn't taste like hate. Basun cries tears of joy seeing his master smile, which is pathetic and cute at the same time. But the peak bromance moment happens in the bath, where all the men get in the hot water to compare their swords. Len, uncomfortable with so much exposed skin and male intimacy, decides he's had enough emotions for one day. He leaves in the middle of the night, determined to return to China and kill his own father, because apparently therapy isn't an option in this family. He gets home, slaughters an army of spirit hunter zombies, but when he enters the boss room, his dad gives the kid a beating so violent he probably forgot his 9x table. The episode ends with Yo's team getting the news that their cranky friend has been captured and needs a rescue. Yo, being the cliché soft-hearted protagonist, decides to go save his ex-rival, but Anna bans the suicidal school field trip because the Tao family is no joke. Meanwhile, Rio, the delinquent with the most phallic pompadour in Japan, finally wins his qualifying match and becomes an official shaman, proving that anyone with willpower and a ridiculous haircut can get magic powers. The situation worsens when Temra, the shy waifu, is woken up by her perverted spirits warning her that Yo ran away from home. On the way to the airport, Yo and Morty are intercepted by a duo of cheesy musicians named Zen and Rio, who look like they walked out of an Elvis cosplay contest gone wrong. They play music so bad it works like an exorcism, sending Amidamaru and Basun straight to the afterlife, leaving the heroes helpless and unable to raise their spiritual weapons. When all seems lost and the heroes are about to be beaten by two lounge singers, Rio emerges from the shadows. He draws his wooden sword, summons Tokagero, the vengeful green lizard turned pet, and lays the smackdown on the musicians. He slices through the villains' instruments and they flee with their tails between their legs when they realize the pompadour isn't playing around.
Even more unpleasant tune.
We better call our
booking agent. Maybe you can get...
Silva appears out of nowhere to confirm Rio is legit, but the party mood dies when Anna arrives looking like she's about to kill everyone. Surprisingly, she summons the spirits back from the underworld through sheer spite and gives permission for the rescue. The whole gang, now including the ex-delinquent and the useless Shorty, heads to China on a rescue mission doomed to fail, while Len and June remain chained in the basement, probably regretting every life choice that led them there. The sightseeing tour toward the home of China's most dysfunctional family continues on a sketchy raft. Rio and Horo waste oxygen arguing over who should row the floating bathtub, while our drugged-out protagonist Yo and pocket narrator Morty relax like they're at a Cancun resort. Apparently, the teamwork logic here is just like school. Two idiots do everything while the leader sleeps. When they reach the Tao mansion, the place is emptier than the love lives of the people watching this channel. No guards, no security, just a suspicious silence that screams, "Trap." Yo, being the tactical genius he is, tells Morty to stay close, ensuring the little guy has a front row seat if they get dismembered. Naturally, they're ambushed by the 5 members of the Go Something or Other squad, generic henchmen who exist only to get hit. Horo decides it's a great idea to use a snowboard inside a house, ignoring all laws of physics and common sense, sliding across the carpet while Rio uses his phallic hairstyle and wooden sword to bash the extras. Realizing that dealing with minions is side character work, the two tell Yo to go on ahead. The protagonist moves forward and runs into the Golden Brothers, a duo with a name like a male strip club, but who lasts shorter in a fight than a virgin in an orgy. Yo defeats them with the ease of swatting flies and finally finds Len and Jun. The Tao heir, keeping up his rebellious emo act, immediately tells Yo to go away because he wants to kill Daddy alone, proving his pride is the only thing bigger than his forehead. But the party isn't over. Lee Pylon appears transformed into a bizarre dragon, controlled by the father of the year, Tao En. Yo and Len have to hit the pet zombie without breaking the toy, realizing the giant lizard is just an oversoul. After solving the zombie's technical issues, they rush to find Rio and Horo, who, predictably, are laid out on the floor, defeated by the last henchman left, proving once again the questionable utility of the protagonist's friends. While Lee Pylon wakes up in June's arms with the hangover of someone who was possessed by a magic dragon, Yo and Len are busy getting beaten by the last member of the elite squad. The enemy moves with suspicious agility, dodging hits like he's playing on easy mode. Morty, actually being useful for something other than screaming, recognizes the moves. It's Shaolin, Lee Pylon's master, who got a turbocharged new body from Tao En in a sort of supernatural midlife crisis where he traded retirement for beating up teenagers. The jacked up old man starts handing out punches to Yo and the whole gang, showing that experience beats youth, or at least beats a bunch of tired shamans. When Shaolin decides it's time to send Yo to the grave and then punish June for being a rebellious daughter, Lee Pylon overcomes his student trauma, jumps in front, and beats the crap out of his former master, proving the student surpasses the teacher, especially when the teacher is a zombie refurbished with second-hand parts. Len and June, with their martyr complexes activated, beg everyone to leave, but Yo has the stubbornness of a brick wall and refuses. That's when an entire army of spirit hunters appears, turning the hallway into a low-budget zombie movie. The gang activates their soul integration and starts slicing through corpses like butter, clearing a path to the final boss's door. Len tries to play the lone hero one last time but is ignored again. When they enter the main hall, Tao En appears out of nowhere, and when I say appears, I mean he teleports behind Rio and Horo with that dirty video game lag trick, slamming the two sidekicks into the floor before they can even fix their hair or their snowboard. The giant patriarch glares at his son and the protagonist, ready to teach a lesson about abusive parenting and generational trauma through pure physical violence. The battle against the father of the year begins, and Tao En is clearly using cheat codes. Len tries to attack, but the old man vanishes and reappears elsewhere, tossing his own son against the wall like a tattered rag doll. Horo tries his luck and gets flattened like a cockroach. Poor Rio thinks he's landed a hit, but he's intercepted mid-air and falls with the grace of a sack of cement. Even Lee Pylon joins the fray and gets wrecked, while En drops that classic villain monologue about how love makes people weak, because apparently, being a solitary sociopath is the secret to success. Yo manages to save Len from being turned into pate, and in a moment of pure adrenaline, Len attacks his own father. But surprise! The old man's body keeps moving and pummels Len again. As it turns out, the giant they were fighting wasn't the real Tao-En, but a massive oversoul designed to overcompensate for something very small in his real life. The true Tao-En emerges from the shadows, revealing himself to be an average-sized, middle-aged guy with a massive inferiority complex because his family was kicked out of the capital centuries ago. Len, exhausted from this aggressive family therapy, finally accepts that he is a Tao, but he doesn't have to be a jerk about it. The symbol on his back vanishes, saving him a fortune in laser removal, and he summons a colossal oversoul, unleashing years of no-hug frustration on his father. The old man is defeated, and just when it looks like the fight might continue, Len's mother and grandfather appear out of nowhere and call off the show.
Grandfather, and she is my mother.
In the most absurd twist possible, the scene cuts to everyone sitting at a giant table enjoying a Chinese banquet, as if they hadn't just tried to murder each other 5 minutes ago. It's the weirdest family dinner in history, with everyone ignoring the bruises and psychological trauma. In the end, as the gang leaves, the toxic dad shows up on horseback, gifts Len a legendary sword, and wishes him luck, proving that in the Tao family, attempted filicide is just a quirky way of saying, "I love you." Len sets off alone, now armed and dangerous, likely heading to the nearest therapy session. The post-family trauma hangover is short-lived because our heroes decide to go hit the bar, completely ignoring underage drinking laws while discussing the trip to America. Morty falls into a deep depression upon realizing he's being left behind like lost luggage. Everyone tries to comfort the gnome with the classic lie that they'll be back soon, but we know this will take hundreds of episodes. At night, the dictator Anna summons Yo for a romantic walk, which is actually just another aggressive coaching session where she reminds him he needs to become the Shaman King or she'll make his life a living hell. Yo, in a moment of supreme simping, buys her a drink as a peace offering. Meanwhile, at a luxury hotel, Horo and Pilika enjoy some savage capitalism. Pilika, in a moment of questionable emotion, hands her brother an ikupasi, and Horo grabs that carved stick with suspicious affection, promising to make good use of the hardwood. The next day, the sadness of the farewell hits soap opera levels, when Yo and Morty skip school for one last undeclared homoerotic encounter, and Anna eats dinner alone because she knows her fiancé prefers his short friend. At the airport, the group prepares to board Len's private jet, proving that money is the ultimate superpower. But before they can take off, a strange guy who looks like Yo's evil clone shows up to ruin the mood. It's Zeke, the main villain who just finished humiliating Silva in the forest and decided to drop by. He blocks the group's attacks with his spirit of fire as if he's swatting flies and delivers some reverse motivational "get stronger so it's more fun when I kill you" speech. However, Zeke's true boss, a tiny thing named Opacho, complains that it's freezing and wants to leave.
Come on, Zeke. We're getting really bored.
Of course. I look forward to seeing all of you again.
The Great Dark Lord, obedient to a toddler in diapers, agrees and vanishes atop his ghost, leaving Yo and the others looking confused with a one-way ticket to disaster. Len's jet goes down with the grace of a brick, but thanks to the script and some convenient spirits, nobody turns into a human pancake. Horo, with the IQ of a door, blames the engine, but Len reveals it was a shamanic attack, proving he's the only one with functioning brain cells in this desert. Amidamaru, playing spiritual GPS, spots a city 2 days walk away. The group begins a death march under the scorching sun, complaining more than seniors at a bank, until Yo, with his high-as-a-kite eagle eyes, spots an oasis no one else saw. They stop to relax because nothing says war zone like a dip in a natural pool.
I may be just a ghost, but even I am much cooler here.
To get out of there, Rio decides to use his secret trucker seduction technique, the big thumb. He sticks his thumb out with such vigor that a guy named Billy Anderson stops his truck, likely hypnotized by the pompadour. Reaching the city, they search for the Dobie village and find an old lady who looks like she escaped a B-horror movie. The crone is actually a puppet controlled by a group of colorful, annoying girls, the Très Magnifique, basically the Wish.com version of Team Rocket. Sharona, the leader, admits she downed the plane because all is fair in love and war, including aerial terrorism. Before the brawl can escalate, Silva pops out of the ground like a city inspector and warns them that killing rivals in front of the judge earns a red card. He teaches the idiots how to use the scroll function on their oracle bells, proving shamans don't read instruction manuals. The girls try to attack anyway but are brushed off like telemarketers. Sharona, realizing her villain career lasted 5 minutes, activates Plan B, cry, and run for the hills. The group elects Yo as leader, since Len is too stressed and Rio is too suspicious, and they continue their journey in the back of the truck, unaware that the loser's van is tailing them, fueled by resentment and cheap gas. A British boy with a questionable haircut and green clothes named Lai Serg is busy beating up random extras in search of strong allies. The Tres Magnifiques, who never tire of embarrassing themselves, try to recruit the kid but are defeated faster than their dignity allows them to admit. Meanwhile, Yo and his friends are still lost, unable to find the Dobie village on spiritual Google Maps. Rio, wandering through town looking for trouble or a boyfriend, finds Lai Serg. The pompadour delinquent, always having a soft spot for pretty, dangerous boys, invites the stranger back to their hotel, because security has never been this group's forte. At the hotel, Rio introduces Lai Serg like a new pet. Len and Horo, suspicious as scalded cats, turn their noses up, but Yo, with his peace and love mushy brain, accepts him instantly.
Nice to meet you. Watch out, it might be a trick!
Lai Serg, who has serious trust issues and parental trauma, decides to test their worth by attacking everyone. He summons Chloe, a sugar-addicted fairy, and shreds Len and Horo in seconds, proving their training served absolutely no purpose. We get the mandatory flashback showing that Zeke killed Lai Serg's parents, explaining why he's a little psycho on a revenge quest. When he attacks Yo, the protagonist dodges with a smile and breaks the boy's pendulum, destroying his favorite toy. Lai Serg is in total shock because Yo has the same derpy face as his parents' killer. Yo, playing his role as a messianic stoner, says that was payback for being an egoistic jerk, but offers to listen to his sob story. Lai Serg, confused by such benevolence from someone who looks like the devil, decides to follow the group, turning the team into a daycare for misfits with daddy issues. After a flashback showing that birthdays in the Diffel family involve getting demonic fairies instead of a PlayStation, Lai Serg decides the best way to handle his trauma is to pull out his wallet. The rich Brit throws money at Len and Horo to pay for their broken toys and tries to leave to be a lonely emo in peace. But Yo, with the persistence of a telemarketer, insists on hearing the kid's sad story. Lai Serg reveals Zeke killed his parents, explaining his obsessive revenge quest and his choice of ridiculous green outfits. The problem is Lai Serg realizes the obvious. Yo has the same face as the murderer, making the atmosphere heavier than Len's ego. While Morty and the girls finally remember that phones exist, Lai Serg is ambushed by a trio of rejects with names that sound like items on a cheap menu: Savage Pan, Mr. Little Lake, and Green Garam. These three stooges manage to capture Chloe and pummel the Brit, proving money can't buy skill. But before Lai Serg is obliterated, Len appears to save the princess in distress. The pointy Sundar uses a basic spirit integration to humiliate the villains, while Horo joins the party to teach the power of friendship via extreme violence. Yo and Rio arrive to complete the gang, and together, they turn the three extras into puree.
Say goodnight!
My woman always loses to a full house.
Royal flush attack!
But the real humiliation comes later. Zeke appears, looks at his defeated lackeys, and decides to fire them from existence, incinerating their bodies because he hates failure as much as he hates weak people. The group decides to head west, but Lai Serg keeps staring at Yo with the suspicion of someone who thinks his stoner friend might turn into the Antichrist at any moment. In the end, they all set off, completely ignoring that they just watched 3 people get cremated. Because for this group, that's just a Tuesday. The episode starts with the origin story no one asked for, how Rio became a shaman. The pompadour delinquent convinced the Asakura elders to train him, proving that persistence and a lack of common sense can get you anywhere. Back in the freezing present, the group treks through a blizzard that would make a polar bear cry. They find the Tres Magnifiques, who have become human popsicles in the snow. Instead of leaving them as lawn ornaments, the group thaws the girls out in a cave. The school camp vibe is interrupted when Lai Serg smells trouble. Zeke appears outside, flaunting his usual power and arrogance. Lai Serg tries to attack, but is swatted away like a fly. The weirdest part is the Tres Magnifiques, instead of running, decide to simp for the genocidal villain and ask to join his fan club.
Mr. Z, wait for us!
Zeke ignores the groupies and leaves, leaving Lai Serg with a post-humiliation depression. Rio, in a moment of questionable wisdom, uses his own inspiring stupidity to cheer up the Brit, reminding him that even an idiot with a pompadour can be useful. The rest ends when Zeke decides to play accelerated global warming and melts a river to create an instant tsunami. Yo holds back the flood with Amidamaru's giant oversoul, but Rio is the one who shines, using his giant thumb to dam the water. Len and Horo finish the job by turning the flood into massive ice cubes, slicing through everything like they're making drinks for giants. Lai Serg uses his wire net to fish out the idiot shaman swept away by the water, and Zeke smirks from a distance, satisfied that his little brother is getting strong enough to become a good vessel, or whatever the maniac is planning. The journey continues, and the Tres Magnifiques prove they are the most dysfunctional group in history when Millie and Sharona fight over food. Millie, acting like a spoiled child, runs away and immediately runs into a suspicious guy named Chrysler, who sounds like a car brand but looks like a rejected extra. He steals her Oracle Bell, proving that security in this tournament is non-existent. When Yo's group finds the girl crying, they pretend to be indifferent just for show, but soon decide to help because apparently they have nothing better to do than cater to side characters. The chase leads to one of the most absurd traffic scenes ever. Rio summons the trucker Billy Anderson, and Len, with his total lack of regard for human life, orders the driver to drive the bus off a cliff to catch the villain. The bus falls. Physics takes a day off, and they land intact to confront Chrysler. The villain uses the stolen Oracle Bell as a shield, and it snaps in half. Millie despairs, thinking she's disqualified, but Silva appears out of nowhere like a corrupt MMO game master and hands her a brand new Oracle Bell, ignoring every established rule. Silva gives a flimsy excuse that the item only works for the original owner, making Chrysler's theft the most useless event in the anime. The Dobie official points at nothing to distract everyone and flees with the villain, likely to avoid explaining more plot holes. The episode ends with Anna arriving at Mount Osori and handing Morty a shopping list, treating the rich kid like her personal pack mule, while a carrier bird delivers gossip to Yo's grandfather. Nothing like spiritual bureaucracy to end the day. The saga of the useless hike continues because Billy the trucker stood the team up, proving that trusting strangers with dubious mustaches is a terrible idea. Homeless and hungry, the group is rescued by Ross and Melanie, an elderly couple who look like they escaped a low-budget horror movie about cannibals. While everyone accepts the ride and lodging as if they have no survival instinct, Lai Serg is the only one using his brain, sensing something is wrong with the house, likely the smell of mothballs mixed with a bad plot twist. The next day, the geezers reveal they are also shamans and ask the boys to defeat dangerous monsters in a coal mine. As if the situation weren't ridiculous enough, the Tres Magnifiques show up out of nowhere, desperate for a crumb of relevance, and rush in to steal the quest. The girls enter the mine and find exactly what they deserve: nothing. It turns out the monsters, the request, and even the old couple's dementia were just a prank by forest spirits. The main group already knew it was fake, except for Lai Serg and Rio, because apparently, stupidity is contagious. Yo says he only played along because he thought it was fun, demonstrating the maturity of a 5-year-old with access to bladed weapons. What follows is a mudball fight, where everyone starts grabbing brown sludge and throwing it at each other, a perfect metaphor for the quality of this filler arc. Even Lai Serg, who lives with a scowl as if he's been holding in a fart for 10 years, decides to play. But the joy is short-lived as Zeke appears floating on his spirit of fire, crashes the party, and decides to incinerate the forest spirits just because he found the game annoying. Zeke complains that Yo shouldn't waste time playing, acts like a toxic older brother who unplugs the console when he's losing, and flies off. While the surviving spirits give thanks for not being barbecued and wonder if Yo can beat his pyromaniac brother, Zeke continues his stalker routine by chatting with Mikihisa, who is spying on everything. Meanwhile, in Osore-zan, Morty finishes spending his family inheritance on useless souvenirs, and Anna heads to a lake to summon her ultimate tool, likely something to whip Yo into shape.
I ask you for 1,080 bees.
For their power will destroy you.
While the group waits on the road like a bunch of refugees, Billy is busy pretending to fix the truck engine. Hungry and cranky, they send Horo to hunt for food, since he's apparently the only one who knows how to do anything other than pose for the camera. In the woods, Horo tries to catch a deer, but is interrupted by Alan, an eco-preacher who protects the forest and rejected the shaman fight because he'd rather hug trees. Alan gives a moralizing lecture, but agrees to take the Eskimo to town, proving his principles are as firm as gelatin. Meanwhile, Anna is having a fascinating conversation with Grandpa Yome about the 1080 beads. To purify the item, she decides to meditate under a freezing waterfall, a legendary technique for contracting pneumonia and selling figurines to pubescent teens. Back in the forest, demolition trucks show up to tear everything down. Alan, in a fit of rage worthy of a vegan at a steakhouse, tries to destroy the trucks with his oversoul. Horo, suddenly transformed into a pacifist, stops the attack, saying violence solves nothing, except in 99% of shonen anime. Horo's genius causes an accident. A truck falls off a cliff, explodes, and sets the entire forest on fire. Way to go, Captain Planet. With animals fleeing and the fire spreading, Horo has the brightest idea of the century. Destroy the trees that haven't burned yet so the fire has nothing left to eat. It's the logic of, I can't have cancer if I kill myself first. He uses his snowboard to commit mass deforestation in the name of environmental preservation. In the end, Horo returns with food, and everyone eats happily while ignoring the ecological disaster. They then plant a few seedlings to pretend they offset the damage. Elsewhere, Zeke talks to a mysterious boy and confirms he has no problem killing his own twin brother if he's weak, winning the Relative of the Year award for the 10th time in a row. Zeke, tired of camping and roasting marshmallows with his lackeys, decides to spice things up. He sends a guy named Basil to kill Yo's friends, because nothing motivates a lazy protagonist more than the trauma of seeing his companions turned into fertilizer. Meanwhile, at the Asakura family temple, Grandpa Yomei finally tells Anna the gossip everyone already knew. Zeke is an ancestor who refuses to die, like that cockroach you hit with a shoe that just keeps walking. He explains the villain's goal is to create a world of only shamans, basically an elitist gated community on a global scale. On the road, Yo's group is resting at a bus stop when Basil appears riding his spirit Siegfried, who looks like a rejected transformer. The battle begins, but Yo notices no one is attacking him. Basil reveals he can't touch a hair on Yo's head because he is Zeke's descendant. Nepotism saves lives once again.
Why are your linebackers trying to protect me?
For his descendant.
Sen?
The revelation that Yo and Zeke are related leaves everyone shocked, except for Len, who drops a Yo is Yo line with the philosophical depth of a fortune cookie, and goes back to the brawl. The fight is a total mess. Basil uses the earth as a medium, regenerates, and traps everyone. Yo uses his giant oversoul to break free, proving size does matter. Just when it looks like Basil is going to turn the tables and kill everyone, a shot rings out from nowhere and blows the villain away. Enter the X-Laws, a group of religious fanatics dressed like they're going to a BDSM party at a church. They introduce themselves as the Annihilators of Evil and invite Yo to their club. But Yo, with his twisted morality, refuses because the angels killed the guy who was trying to kill them 5 seconds ago. Lyserg, however, looks at the white uniforms and big guns and gets all excited, clearly switching teams mentally. The episode ends with everyone on a bus while Zeke receives the news and says things are about to get interesting. Code for, I'm going to kill more people soon. While you are busy breathing, the useless Temra decides to break the seal on the Tome of the Shaman because reading Do Not Touch signs is too hard, releasing Zeke's pets, Zenki and Koki. Before these aberrations can turn Morty into dwarf puree, the boss lady Anna steps in. She uses her 1080 rosary to seal the demons with the ease of someone closing a Tupperware lid, making the monsters cry because it's impossible for anyone to master Zeke's technique that fast, unless they're the devil's fiancé. Meanwhile, the journey continues for our group of misfits. The Trade Magnifique, whom no one asked to return, are lost and being useless as usual. Sharona tries to cross a bridge but is attacked by Tilda, a professional stalker who steals her ghost and slashes her tires, proving that girl fights in this anime involve spirit theft and vehicle vandalism. Yo's group decides that saving the world is exhausting and heads to a hot spring resort because nothing says apocalyptic urgency like getting naked in a tub. Tilda, the ghost thief, follows them. In the sauna, while everyone discusses the threat of Zeke, Lyserg drops the bombshell that he agrees with the X-Law's fascist methods of kill first, ask never. Things get tense, but Yo, with the emotional depth of a door, says he knows nothing about his connection to Zeke. Things get weird when Rio goes to bathe alone, and Lyserg joins him in the hot water. Rio senses something is wrong, mostly because Lyserg wants to have an important talk naked in the middle of a bath, but Rio notices Tilda's presence and kills the mood.
The best way to defeat a chameleon ghost is to bore them.
Tilda, realizing her stealth is on par with an elephant in a crystal shop, tries to use the stolen ghost to transform into Anna and wake Yo. The genius plan fails miserably because Yo just falls back asleep in her face, proving his laziness is immune to any sorcery. When Amidamaru demands the imposter show her true face, Tilda flees. She tries to attack Horo, but Cory is awake and freezes the threat. Tilda then tries to enter Len's room, but the hothead appears behind her, ready for a crime. Desperate and humiliated, she flees again and decides to transform into Marco to lure Lyserg. But then the unthinkable happens. The Tres Magnifiques show up to be useful for the first time in history. Sally knocks Tilda out with her oversoul. Sharona recovers her ghost and explains to a confused Lyserg that it was all a cheap illusion. Yo thanks the girls, while in some dark corner, Zeke chats with a mysterious figure about how incompetent his lackeys are. Rio and Tokagero decide to watch a vampire movie at the cinema because apparently their lives don't have enough monsters already. While the ghost spirit flees the screen in terror, Rio is attacked in real life by Boris, proving karma is instant. Outside, the X-Laws are blocking the cinema entrance like VIP club bouncers, telling Sharona they are there to stop Zeke from hurting people, ironically preventing people from being saved. Len finds Rio passed out and suspects it wasn't a vampire, but a shaman with a neck fetish. Before the forensics can begin, Rio wakes up possessed by a demon of rage and tries to bite everyone. Horo manages to hold the beast down, but Lyserg, the human Wikipedia, starts explaining the lore of Dracula and Bram Stoker like it's story time at daycare. Father Damiagi also joins the nerd circle, explaining about Vlad the Impaler, while Yome sends Anna off with the Book of Forbidden Techniques, stating she's already learned everything. The situation at the cinema turns into chaos. Rio breaks the ice and bites Horo. The snowboarder immediately turns into a generic vampire and attacks the group. Lyserg, with the mental stability of a French fry in hot oil, decides the only logical solution is to kill Horo with his pendulum. The group stops the homicidal Brit, and Yo asks if he's gone mad. Lyserg, with the coldness of a serial killer, responds that killing his friend would stop the infection from spreading, which would ensure Zeke's defeat. Priorities, right? Meanwhile, the Tres Magnifiques are ambushed by Father Damiagi and the vampire Boris. In a predictable plot twist, Boris stabs the priest in the back, calls him a weak human, and disintegrates him, proving the union between the church and vampires doesn't last long. Yo and his crew arrive for the confrontation. Len, with his sharp eye, accuses Boris of being a follower of Zeke. Lyserg, blinded by hate and the urge to kill something, attacks Boris head-on, but his heart, full of emotional holes, allows Boris to dodge and sink his teeth into the boy's neck. Lyserg getting bitten turns the battle into a total clusterfuck. Rio saves Millie from becoming a snack. Horo blasts Boris away, and Yo tells the girls to make a run for it while they handle the mess. The group chases Boris into a cinema, discovering that the church and the theater are connected, which explains a lot about the town's questionable architecture. Outside, the X-Laws are itching to go in and slaughter everyone, but the Tres Magnifiques decide to block the way, rebelling against the fanatics in white. Inside the cinema, Rio threatens to drive his wooden sword straight into Boris's heart, but Len interrupts the Buffy the Vampire Slayer moment to explain the game mechanics. Boris isn't a vampire, he's a shaman, using his ghost to control whoever he bites. In other words, there's a spirit inside Lyserg now. The possessed Brit attacks, dodges Len's counter, and captures Yo. Boris starts his generic villain monologue about hating humans and wanting to kill everyone. Yo, with his annoying shonen protagonist logic, points out that if Boris is with Zeke, he's technically with humans too. Boris loses his cool and orders Lyserg to kill Yo. In a moment of suicidal lucidity, Lyserg begs Yo to kill him to save the rest. Yo, smiling like he's on something, refuses and forces Lyserg to bite him instead. Boris thinks he's won and sends his spirit, Blomro, to hijack Yo's body. But surprise, Yo's body is already occupied. Amidamaru and Yo are so perfectly synced that there's no room for anyone else in that chassis. Amidamaru grabs the invading spirit by the arm, and Len seizes the opening to finish Boris off. Blomro, the vampire spirit, tells a sob story about loyalty before Boris cowardly flees, but his escape is short-lived. Outside the cathedral, the X-Laws are waiting with guns loaded. Yo steps in front, defending the villain who tried to kill him 5 minutes ago, arguing that killing makes them no better than Zeke. Marco, who has zero patience for hippie pacifist speeches, summons his arch spirit. Boris throws himself in front of the blast and turns into human barbecue. Before leaving, the X-Laws invite the group to join them. Yo declines, but Lyserg, tired of playing the nice hero who doesn't kill, decides the X-Laws' murderous vibe suits him better. He abandons his friends, leaving Rio and the girls crying on the sidewalk, and walks away with his new pack of religious zealots. Yo's team of misfits was wandering aimlessly like a bunch of headless chickens in the desert when fate decided to punish them with a new character. A kid with a questionable look and an even worse name, Chocolove, appears out of nowhere telling jokes so bad they'd make a dad joke enthusiast cringe. He claims to have researched the group and insists on joining, which is hard to buy when the guy's life goal is to become the world's greatest comedian, proving the American dream is officially dead. Before Yo can decline this sketchy HR hire, they're ambushed by Zen and Rio. Len, who has no patience for foreplay, thrashes the duo easily. However, like any self-respecting anime enemy, they get back up with a hacked new Oversoul. As Len preps for round 2, Chocolove steps in. We get a sentimental flashback where Chocolove's mentor talks about the wind of laughter and hands over the ghost mic, but nobody cares about moral lessons right now. Back to the brawl, Chocolove reveals that Zen and Rio are just puppets controlled by a gothic mariachi named Ramiro. The villain tries to attack, but Chocolove dodges and uses all his furioku to tell a joke, and against all odds, it works. The pun affects Ramiro's spirits, who start laughing uncontrollably and ignore their master's orders, proving this anime's power system is a total joke.
Guy, there's not a single person alive that will laugh at that joke.
With the enemies laughing like high idiots, Horo and Rio take the chance to send Ramiro blasting off, Team Rocket style. Meanwhile, in the betrayal backstage, Lyserg is chatting with Marco from the X-Laws, being seduced by the promise of power and a meeting with the cult leader, Jean. The British kid is desperate for attention. Simultaneously, at the airport, Anna and Temra are looking for the pint-sized Morty, only to find Faust carrying the little guy like a piece of carry-on luggage. Anna, with her usual coldness, recruits the maniac to fight for Yo, leaving Temra and Morty shocked by the boss lady's choice in friends. Back in the desert, the group decides to accept Chocolove, because apparently, the only requirement to join the team is being a weirdo, and they head off toward Dobie Village. The airport saga continues, with Anna explaining she called Faust because he has a pure heart, which is a nice way of saying he's a useful psychopath. The group grows when June and her pet cadaver, Lee Pylon, show up to check on her little brother Len. Anna, ever the pragmatist, summons Billy to be their Uber to the city where Yo is. Meanwhile, Chocolove guides the main group to a house in the middle of nowhere, home to the descendants of Seminoa. They hear screams and see the Très Magnifique running away terrified, usually a sign you shouldn't enter, but protagonist tier stupidity prevails. Inside, they meet Lily Lala, a woman who hates the Dobie tribe with the fire of 1,000 suns, and decides the best way to explain this is by attacking her guests with a 4D memory projector. Lily Lala throws Yo and his gang into an interactive flashback from 500 years ago, showing warriors being slaughtered by a Dobie member using the spirit of fire. The group snaps out of the trance, rubs 2 brain cells together, and realizes the killer was Zeke in a past life. Yo, being a masochist, asks to watch the horror movie repeatedly looking for clues. Lala calls them idiots and tries to kill them, but the group fights back, beats her spirits into heaven, and cures the woman's trauma in the process. Grateful for the beatdown, Lily Lala smiles and hands over the GPS to Dobie Village. On the other side of the map, Anna and her entourage arrive in town, but since sense of direction in this anime is optional, they realize they're in the wrong place. The Très Magnifique show up again, this time offering a ride, but it's a total scam. As soon as Yo, bless his dumb heart, reveals Lily Lala's directions, the girls steal the info and bolt in the van, leaving the group stranded. Being a nice guy really sucks.
Hey, the yo what's ups. That's kind of.
Meanwhile, Zeke, the ultimate stalker, sends 3 henchwomen called the Hanagumi to pay Yo an unfriendly visit. On a random mountain, Anna bumps into Zeke. The villain reveals he wants Yo to get stronger fast so he can help him in some twisted, manipulative brother talk. Anna, who has no time for genocide-flavored flirting, tries to slap him. Zeke catches her hand and says he likes aggressive women, but Anna uses her left hand and lands the slap anyway, showing exactly who wears the pants in this toxic toxic relationship. Zeke laughs, tells her to deliver a power-up book to Yo, and flies off on his spirit of fire. Yo and his friends are ambushed by the Hanagumi. Kana, the leader, talks trash, calling Yo weak and using her night ghost, Ashcroft, to humiliate him. The group takes a massive L. Nobody can land a hit, and Yo is left alone, about to be finished off. That's when the real protagonist arrives. Anna rolls up in a van stolen from the Tre Magnifique, summoning Zenki and Koki, Zeke's former pets. She uses the demons to crush Kana's knight with ease, forcing the villains to retreat with their tails between their legs, claiming Zeke forbade them from messing with the boss. Zeke appears later to congratulate the girls on their failure, saying the next step is the power-up book. And to round out the bad decisions, we see Lyserg sporting his new X-Law's fascist uniform, ready to be blessed by the cult leader. Everyone's favorite supreme dictator and abusive fiancé, Anna, decides the group's current power level is pathetic even by her standards. So she brings out a little magic book called the Tome of the Shaman. She announces she's going to shove all this knowledge into their hollow heads through special training, which is really just high-end psychological torture. While the group prepares to enter a suspicious cave opened by Anna's prayer beads, little Morty realizes his only use in the series is narrating the obvious and crying in a corner. He goes off to have an emo moment but is interrupted by Zeke himself. The villain shows up just to rub it in Morty's face that he's an NPC with no powers, incapable of satisfying any plot needs. While Morty deals with his impotence, Yo and his friends are inside the hallucinogenic cave, receiving a forced mental download of Zeke's memories and feeling what true power feels like. They emerge from the cave boosted on Furioku, with that 1,000-yard stare of someone who has seen things that cannot be unseen.
Harmony. Such hidden power. So much potential.
Morty and Anna worry if they've turned into psychopaths, but before they can ask for a psych eval, the X-Laws show up to ruin the mood. Marco, the leader who looks like he never got a hug as a kid, attacks immediately, but the group dodges with the ease of someone dodging debt collectors. Realizing Yo won't bow down to the justice-flavored BDSM cult, the white-clad soldiers retreat. Zeke watches from afar, proud like a father watching his son land his first punch at school. Finally, Anna gives Yo the antiquity sword, a rusty blade that looks useless, but Yo holds it dearly, probably imagining where he's going to shove it in the next fight. Zeke is chatting with his useless minions and little Opacho about how Yo is getting beefy, while the X-Laws argue with an Iron Maiden about the potency of the juice the protagonist just drank. Meanwhile, Yo stares at his new sword, the antiquity, trying to figure out how to use that hunk of metal without looking like an idiot. The group decides to look for Dobie Village, but since Morty's laptop is only good for playing solitaire, Amidamaru turns on his spiritual GPS and says he can smell destiny. In the middle of the desert, Lyserg, dressed in his fascist Fashion Week uniform, tries to convince Marco that Yo should join the Iron Maiden, Jean. Zeke appears out of nowhere to say that's stupid, and that Yo's destiny lies with him. Shortly after, the three stooges of the Hanagumi show up for a rematch, thinking this time will be different. Anna, with the patience of someone dealing with toddlers, tells the men to handle it. The girls go all out, but the group dodges their hits like they're doing the Macarena. Frustrated, the girls release their giant oversouls, thinking size matters. Len and Rio dispatch their opponents easily, but Yo loses control of his new power. In a moment of phallic enlightenment, he remembers the rusty sword, unsheathes it, and creates a second blade of energy, penetrating Kana's defense with unnecessary brutality. When the dust settles, Zeke descends from the sky on his spirit of fire, thanks his servants for being incompetent, and drops a bombshell. He tells Yo to take good care of his body because he's coming to take it back soon, calling our laid-back protagonist little brother. Before the shock wears off, Yo's masked father, Mikihisa, pops out of the bushes to confirm that yes, this family tree is more twisted than Morty's spine. To explain the soap opera that Yo's life has become, we're thrown into a flashback where we see his mother pregnant with twins. Grandfather Yomei tries to kill the evil baby with a strike as soon as he's born, but the newborn Zeke comes out of the womb dodging attacks and spitting fire at his own father, Mikihisa, leaving him with that burnt to a crisp look forever. The demon baby escapes, warning he'll be back for his younger brother's body, proving he's been the king of identity theft since the nursery. Back to the present, Chokolov, the comedian who makes no one laugh, uses his social ineptitude to point out the obvious. If Yo is Zeke's twin, he's technically half villain. The mood gets heavier than Judas's conscience, but Yo agrees, taking the heat. That's when the X-Laws arrive, led by the traitor Lyserg, who insists they just want to help, by sucking the group's powers into the Iron Maiden. Obviously, Yo and his friends tell them to get lost, which offends Marco's fragile ego. The X-Laws attack as a group, mocking the hero's filthy oversouls. Morty goes hysterical asking why Yo isn't fighting, and Anna reveals he's just waiting for the right moment to insert everything. When Marco and his fallen angel squad charge, the shaman reveals his new toy. He merges Amidamaru into the Sword of Light, then shoves the Sword of Light inside the Stone Sword Antiquity. It's a sword inside a sword, a double spiritual bed, a penetration of unparalleled levels. With this massive, thick oversoul, the Spirit of Sword, Yo sweeps all the arch spirits away in a burst of white, milky power. Humiliated, the X-Laws retreat while Mickey Hisa cries behind his mast, proud to see his youngest son can handle two swords at once much better than he ever could. While Iron Maiden Jean feels an uncontrollable urge to find Yo, probably to discuss torture techniques or cookie recipes, Marco and Lyserg act like glorified babysitters and escort her. Meanwhile, our troupe of protagonists reaches a city where the local fashion seems to be wearing an oracle bell on the wrist, turning the place into an Apple Watch convention for unemployed shamans. Len, with the temperament of someone who forgot his meds, finds it weird that nobody is killing each other in the street, until a random extra warns that starting a fight there is a bad idea. Since Len only solves problems with violence, he goes for a walk to cool off, but runs into Zeke, the Asakura family's #1 stalker. The villain tries to recruit Len into his spiritual pyramid scheme, but Len refuses and tries to attack, only to be stopped by the garden gnome Morty. Zeke, sensing the vibe got weird with the rest of the gang arriving, leaves, promising he'll still possess Len's body, a line that sounded way more erotic than threatening. Suddenly, the group is ambushed by two generic shamans who think they work for Zeke. Chocolove, proving his uselessness, gets trapped in a water bubble, while Horo tries not to be useless against the other enemy. But the bar fight is interrupted by the extra from before. On the other side of town, Yo meets Team Niles, a group using Egyptian gods who captured Zen and Rio to lure Zeke, a strategy with negative IQ. That's when the X-Laws arrive with the subtlety of a garbage truck going downhill. Team Niles decides to have a god-sized contest with the X-Laws, and the fight moves to the desert. Lyserg, wanting to impress his new boss, breaks the Egyptians' mediums as easily as toothpicks. Just as the British kid is about to commit intentional homicide with his pendulum swinging in the enemy leader's face, Yo screams his name with all the passion of a romantic drama. The pendulum stops millimeters from the target, and Marco looks disappointed by the lack of blood, like a dad watching his kid lose at soccer. Then Jean decides it's time to come out of the closet, or rather, her spike-filled Iron Maiden. She emerges from her portable BDSM chamber, covered in blood and ivy, ready for combat. With her spirit, Mosh, she traps Team Niles in torture cages and orders their execution without mercy, completely ignoring Yo's horrified screams.
Don't do it!
In the name of peace.
Yo realizes the X-Law's justice involves turning people into human Swiss cheese. Later, Marco reveals to Lyserg that it wasn't the spirit that stopped the attack, but rather the kid's soft heart that skipped a beat when he heard his ex-friend Yo's voice. After traumatizing Morty with the previous carnage, the group decides to relax at a restaurant, because nothing builds an appetite like shamans being tortured to death. Yo and his friends are discussing how buff they got just by reading an old book when Team Iceman appears, a crew that clearly escaped from the cast of Frozen. Pino, the frosty leader, starts mocking Horo, turning the conversation into a contest of who has the hardest popsicle. Anna, as charming as a cactus, asks if they want to scrap. Yo, with his usual laziness, tries to decline, saying there's no reason to fight. But Team Iceman insists so much that Yo, Rio, and Faust accept the challenge just to shut them up. Amidamaru, excited, asks if Yo is going to whip out his Spirit of Sword already, but Yo prefers not to show off right away. The ice group attacks and captures Yo, but Rio and Faust go into protect the princess mode and save him. Faust, who used to be a psychopath, now fights with the calm of someone who's had too much chamomile tea, revealing that his dream of bringing his wife back has already been satisfied by Anna's powers, a phrase that leaves a lot of room for interpretation regarding what Anna does in her spare time. Meanwhile, Zeke and his lackey Opacho watch from the front row, probably eating popcorn. Rio decides to show that size matters and releases his oversoul, Yamata no Orochi, a gigantic snake that would make any reptile lover happy. Team Iceman tries to attack, but they burn through all their spirit energy and run dry. Confused about how they lost to a bunch of misfits, Pino sees Yo finally draw his spirit of sword. Yo humiliates them in one hit but gives them the cliché shonen moral lecture first, sympathizing with the enemy. In the end, everyone goes back to the restaurant, and Pino admits that real strength comes from the heart, not pride, ending their run in the series as the luxury extras they always were. The group is camping in the middle of nowhere, arguing over directions like a family on a failed vacation. Everyone thinks they're lost, but their spirits insist they feel someone calling. Spiritual GPS recalculating the route. They find a city in ruins, and Amidamaru, with the nose of a bloodhound, points to a lake, saying they need to enter the deep, wet hole located there. Without questioning the water's hygiene, Yo and the troop dive in. They swim through an endless tunnel, a lung capacity test that would turn anyone purple, until they find a dry cave on the other side. They philosophize about how only one of them will become the Shaman King, creating that pre-elimination reality show tension. Suddenly, a light flashes. A voice says only the chosen may pass, and Yo wakes up in a deserted city that looks like a zombie movie set. Yo starts finding his friends' mediums scattered on the ground and sees all of them hanging unconscious from a tree like macabre Christmas ornaments. An invisible force pushes Yo back, calling him a failure and telling him to quit, but Yo, stubborn as ever, attacks the invisible force because he refuses to abandon his useless friends. At that moment, he wakes up for real in a hotel room. Turns out the whole thing was a cheap psychological test. Silva appears, congratulates Yo on passing the Great Spirits trial, and announces they've finally reached Dobe Village. Anna reveals they took a shortcut, and just as Yo thinks he'll get some peace, Zeke shows up again, proving he's homeless and lives only to stalk his brother. The villain gives a speech about the Great Spirit being the meeting point for all souls, blah blah blah. Then, Goldva makes an announcement like a school principal. The fight will now be in trios. The group-forming dynamic begins. Yo chooses the Sword and Skeleton Gang, while Len is forced to carry the dead weight of the comedian and the Ice Boy. Everyone shares that they passed the test by proving the power of friendship, securing their entry into the next phase of the Tournament of Death. The Shaman Fight tournament finally kicks off. While Yo and his crew watch a random team of Zeke's lackeys slaughter some red shirts, the real action is happening at the souvenir shop. June and her pet zombie, Lee Pylon, decide to take a romantic stroll because nothing says necrophiliac sibling love like walking through a tribal village in the middle of nowhere. Their walk is interrupted by two brats playing spirit hunters, proving the Tao family has serious issues with birth control and human resource management. Meanwhile, Len is busy being his usual edgy, brooding teenager, declaring he won't lose to anyone, until two losers named Paunchy and Conchi show up to warn him that things have gone south.
You guys, we followed June, and she's in big trouble.
It turns out the attackers are ex-employees of the Tao family, who were laid off when Len decided to stop being a homicidal psychopath and join the good guys. Their leader, Ginny, is pissed because years of professional assassination work went down the drain, which honestly is a valid labor grievance. To the surprise of absolutely no one, this group of bitter ex-staffers, Team Doshi Force, is the first opponent for Team the Len. On fight day, Len adopts a brilliant strategy, becoming a human punching bag. He tells the Ice Boy and the unfunny comedian to just sit back and watch, which was probably a relief for the audience. As the match begins, Ginny and his goons wail on Len, who takes every hit with the stoicism of someone enjoying a bit of public masochism. He claims he will take it all, which sounds weird out of context, but he insists it's to pay for his sins. After taking more of a beating than a cheap steak and apologizing for being a toxic boss, Len decides he's had enough humiliation for one day. He pulls out his Great Over Soul, which compensates for anything else that might be small, and wipes the spirit hunters off the map in a single move.
That N chose wisely. You are our best hope, Len. Our best hope to become Shaman King.
Ginny, seeing the sheer size of his former master's tool, admits defeat, stating the family pride is intact. Len wins the fight, tries to strike a badass polishing my sword pose, but faints from exhaustion, proving that drama burns a lot of calories. Since no one else has a scheduled fight, the group does what any shonen protagonist does in their downtime: look for food or train until they vomit blood. While Len's trio fights over dinner like wild animals, Rio decides to head out to gather intel, which in his language means scouting for any available tail within a 5-mile radius. He finds Anise, a girl from Team Arabian, and immediately enters simp warrior mode. However, the seduction is cut short by Halun, her fiancé, who arrives slapping the girl and telling her not to talk to strangers, proving to be the kind of guy everyone wants to see get decked. Rio, indignant that someone dared to hit the woman he wanted to hit on, is furious, but the couple leaves. Later, we discover that Team Asakura is set to fight Team Parthia, which is exactly the abusive fiancé's team. Rio begs Yo to let him handle Halun alone, likely to compensate for some repressed sexual frustration. The fight begins, and the enemy team creates a sandstorm, turning the arena into a low-budget Mad Max movie. Meanwhile, in the stands, Chocolove tries to drop a terrible joke about wives. Anna, who has zero patience for corny dad jokes, summons her demons Zenki and Koki to beat the crap out of him before Len and Horo can even react. Back in the sandstorm, Rio is taking a beating from Halun, who uses his social status and spirit to dominate the fight. But Rio, driven by the power of unrequited love and the urge to show who has the bigger snake, activates his great oversoul, Yamata no Orochi. He delivers a speech about how you shouldn't cage the woman you love and crushes the playboy's oversoul with his massive, thick serpent.
It's maximum Morioku time! Yeah!
Silva declares victory for the protagonists. In the end, Halun has a cheap epiphany, claiming he'd love Anise even without an arranged marriage, and they leave happy. But the real twist happens when Kiane, the mysterious third member of their team, removes her cloak to reveal she's a total babe, leaving Rio in a state of shock and questioning every life choice he's made up to that point. Horo is walking through the Dobi village when he bumps into his sister, Pilika, who came personally to ensure he isn't a complete failure. Meanwhile, a group of religious nuts is shouting in the street that the world is ending, which is ironically true considering Zeke wants to set everything on fire. But Horo says he'll save the day by becoming Shaman King. The Doomsday Preachers try to convert Horo to their cult, telling him to give up on his dreams, but he and his sister bail before they're forced to sign up for a newsletter. The group gathers, and the impossible happens. Pilika laughs at one of Chocolove's jokes. This event is so rare it should cause a rift in the space-time continuum, but they ignore it and focus on the fact that the annoying preachers are actually Team Doom, Team Len's next opponents. Pilika, worried her brother will be eliminated by a bunch of fanatics, tries to make him train harder, but Horo is confident. On match day, Colin gives the signal, and everyone starts with their aggression turned up to 11. Team Doom operates like a well-coordinated sect. While Len and Chocolove easily dismantle the spirits of Iomi and Ozzy, Horo gets trapped in a sphere created by Ronnie's oversoul. He realizes he can't use his powers inside and starts to panic, his default setting. But then he remembers his sister believes in him, and nothing gives a shonen character more strength than the fear of disappointing a cute younger sister with violent tendencies. Horo channels his protective brother complex, activates his strongest oversoul, and bursts Ronnie's bubble from the inside out. Team Len wins. Ronnie admits the Ice Boy's faith is stronger than his preaching, and Pilika runs to hug her brother. Of course, as a reward for winning, she drags him off for another brutal training session because sibling love in anime is always expressed through physical pain. Faust, the necromancer who looks like he just walked out of a botched rehab, decides the best place to hang out is the supermarket, where he stares at a girl as if he's picking out a cut of meat for dinner. The girl faints, proving the doctor's dead fish eyes are a weapon in their own right, but Faust rushes to help because he's a psychotic gentleman. We discover the girl is part of Team Spartacus, a dysfunctional family consisting of her husband, and their son, who think it's a great idea to bring a child to watch his parents get beaten in a death tournament. They thank him and leave, while Morty, the bobble-headed dwarf, is left shaking, remembering the time Faust opened him up like a bag of chips. When it's time to fight, Team Spartacus reveals their grand strategy, using the life energy of the wife and son to buff the husband, which is basically family cannibalism with extra steps. Morty watches, sweating and having surgical Vietnam flashbacks, convinced Faust is going to turn this happy family into Halloween decor. But when the combat begins between Asakura and Spartacus, Faust summons his giant skeleton and snaps the enemy's oversoul like a toothpick. The father tries again, sucking every last drop of life from his wife and child. But Faust proves that medicine and necromancy are basically the same thing when the patient is already dead inside. Instead of turning his opponents into fertilizer, Faust destroys their spirits, and in a twist that leaves Morty with a surprised Pikachu face, face, decides to treat their wounds. The mad doctor reveals he was just observing their anatomy the whole time, which is still creepy, but at least no one died. Morty realizes that maybe, just maybe, the guy who stitched his own dog's legs onto himself has changed a bit. The fight ends with Faust as the MVP and Morty concluding that the doctor might just cure that family's stupidity. Team Len decides to strengthen their bonds of friendship in the straightest way possible, taking a communal bath and discussing whose sword is bigger, metaphorically speaking. The naked party is interrupted by Nikram, the vengeful brother of that Dobie official Len killed a while ago that nobody cared about. Meanwhile, Silva observes a girl named Nyorai, who has the generic power to manipulate the darkness in people's hearts. The favorite trope of every bad gothic fanfic. Zeke shows up just to give a lecture and confirm the girl is dangerous before Silva is attacked by shadow redshirts. Len starts spiraling because his past is shadier than a back alley, and Nyorai takes the opportunity to invade his mind. Horo, with his inferiority complex hitting the ceiling, tries to help but ends up getting controlled too, realizing his only function in this show is to be the comic relief who gets beaten up. He returns to the village totally possessed and tries to attack Yo, but Anna handles the situation with her usual diplomacy, summoning 2 giant demons to slap the snowboarder across the ears. Chocolove, seeing the team is more unstable than enriched uranium, decides they need to fight alone. In the arena, Nyorai's team, Daira-Do, faces Team Len, which is a complete mess. Len is swinging his spear at the air, fighting imaginary ghosts. Nyorai then makes her biggest mistake. She looks at Chocolove and tells him the absolute truth, that he isn't funny and no one will ever laugh at his jokes. This brutal reality check should have killed anyone, but Chocolove uses his lack of humor as fuel. He drops a joke so bad it breaks the villainess's mental control and wakes his friends up through pure secondhand embarrassment. Len regains his sanity, or what's left of it, and the team massacres their opponents. In the end, they learn the best defense against darkness is being a clueless clown. The episode starts with some questionable filler, where a group of anti-spirit fanatics called Fudo and his friends paralyze the Tre Magnifique, which honestly is a favor to the plot since they're useless anyway. These new villains have the genius ideology that spirits possessing humans is the work of the devil, ignoring the fact that this is literally the plot of the entire anime. Ryo falls into a deep despair when his pet lizard, Tokagero, is sealed, crying harder than a K-pop fan on disbandment day. The situation worsens when Morty, the kid who should be studying, is possessed by, wait for it, a blacksmith. But not just any blacksmith, it's Mosuke, Amidamaru's best bro. Fudo shows up with his televangelist act, wanting to exorcise everyone, and attacks Amidamaru. The samurai, in a fit of idiotic pacifism, refuses to fight because he doesn't want to hurt humans, even if the human in question is trying to delete his existence. Faust tries to help, but his skeleton is blocked, proving necromancy doesn't solve everything. Then comes the most early 2000s scene possible. Morty, possessed by Mosuke, decides to use a laptop to create an oversoul. Yes, you read that right. The kid uses a bulky notebook as a spiritual medium. Morty turns into a hacker shaman and charges at Fudo, while Yo finally convinces Amidamaru to stop being a wuss. Yo uses the spirit sword and defeats the generic villain, who realizes that maybe not every spirit is evil.
Prepare to face the power of Amidamaru!
Yo screams at the sky thinking his friend is in the Great Spirit, but the poor guy is trapped in Windows 98 for the rest of eternity. Things get dark, or red, immediately when Zeke decides to turn his opponents into well-done BBQ using the Spirit of Fire, proving he's not in this tournament to make friends or trade friendship bracelets. While the gang eats lunch and discusses how broken the villain is, Mikihisa appears in his I'm totally not suspicious mask to question who the strongest team is, instigating an ego trip between Team Len and Asakura. To settle this, Mikihisa proposes a training exercise that defies all laws of logic and sanity. He makes everyone write on grains of rice. After they perform this culinary microsurgery, the masked man throws the grains off a massive cliff and tells them to find them. It's basically looking for a needle in a haystack, except the needle is edible and the haystack is a deadly canyon. Meanwhile, the Tre Magnifique, still irrelevant, discover their oracle bells weren't broken. They were just vibrating in sympathy, because their next fight is against Zeke. Panic sets in with the force of a potent laxative. On the other side, Team Asakura faces Team Ocean 3, who compensate for their lack of charisma with giant oversouls. Yo and Rio start taking a beating because apparently, size does matter in the spirit world. But Yo and Faust decide two can play at this astral sword measuring contest. They create their own massive oversouls and send the enemies home crying.
That sword is so big! Don't cry! We're still the regional synchronized swimming champions! They can't take it away from us!
In the end, everyone returns to the cafe frustrated because they couldn't complete the rice training, proving that scavenging for food on the ground doesn't help in combat. But the icing on the cake is when the Très Magnifique, still thinking they're hot stuff, mock the name of Zeke's team, unaware they just signed their own death warrants. Zeke watches from a distance, ready to squash them like roaches, while Yo and the others look on with the faces of people watching a slow-motion train wreck. The Très Magnifique decide that assisted suicide is a great career strategy and refuse to forfeit their match against Zeke, relying on image training, which is basically a collective hallucination. Yo, being the protagonist who hates seeing stupid people die, decides to intervene with his infallible logic. He's going to beat the girls up until they give up on getting beaten up by Zeke. It's the peak of shonen chivalry, preventive domestic violence as a solution for everything. Yo intercepts the group and begins the pedagogical massacre. He drops all 5 of them with a single strike from his spirit sword, but they keep getting up like defective inflatable tube men, insisting on fighting. Yo, pitying their mediocrity, lets them land a combined hit on him just so they can feel special. They're all happy thinking they actually did something, until Anna arrives with a bucket of cold water to remind them that, by the rules, their attack was illegal. Finally, they agree to forfeit and create the legend of a victory by default, which is the only victory they'd ever achieve in their lives. Meanwhile, in the desert, Len continues to be a rebellious teen and refuses to look for rice on the ground, preferring brute force. Mikihisa, tired of this spoiled brat attitude, decides to teach him a lesson and humiliates Len in a fight, dodging everything like he's Neo from the Matrix. Len manages to land one pathetic kick and finally understands that pride doesn't put food on the table or win fights. He swallows his tears and goes back to crawling in the dirt looking for rice with Yo, proving that the path to spiritual enlightenment involves a lot of dirt under your fingernails and lost carbohydrates. Zeke continues his campaign of spiritual ethnic cleansing by inviting Fudo's team to be his lackeys. When Gecko and Nico try to play hero and attack, they are instantly deleted from existence by Zeke's henchmen. Fudo, the anti-spirit fanatic who was annoying 3 episodes ago, gets pissed and attacks Zeke, only for the spirit of fire to burn his soul and eat the rest like a bar snack. One less hypocrite in the world.
One with the spirit of fire.
Meanwhile, the X-Laws are in a very dark headspace. Marco nearly kills his opponents in a match that was already over, because to him, crime and punishment are the same thing. Lyserg, the boy who traded friendship for firearms and leather outfits, starts having an existential crisis. He wants an arch-spirit of his own and asks Marco if he can stop babysitting the Iron Maiden to go to the front lines. Marco denies him, treating the kid like an incompetent intern. The depression hits hard when Lyserg decides to abandon the only creature that truly loved him, the fairy Chloe, to gain power. Yo and the gang try to return the fairy to Lyserg in the middle of a battle, but the British traitor takes offense at the attempt at friendship, protects his new fanatical buddies, and leaves Chloe behind crying. It's the most toxic breakup scene in the anime. Lyserg finally receives his arch-spirit and a gun, completing his transformation into a generic cult soldier. Marco then reveals his genius plan to use the Gate of Babylon to kill Zeke and Yo, proving their fanaticism has no brakes. Amidst all this, Zeke feels the heat is just beginning, smiling like a man who knows the script is on his side. The mood in the protagonist's camp is bleaker than a funeral, with Rio crying his eyes out over his breakup with Lyserg like a teenage girl in a Netflix movie. Morty tries to comfort the pompadoured guy, but gets shot down monumentally and runs off to cry in the woods. When Rio finally decides to stop the drama and fix that massive banana on his head, the British Judas himself shows up. Lyserg wastes no time, kidnaps Morty, and sends word that if Yo wants to see his friend again, he has to come play Yes or No in the north. Meanwhile, the X-Laws are preparing a bizarre ritual called the Gate of Babylon, which essentially serves to delete Zeke from the server of life. Marco, the leader with 24/7 sunglasses, explains to Morty that Yo is also going to be wiped out in the process because they are two halves of the same rotten orange. When the team arrives to save the franchise's shortest character, Marco demands Yo kneel before Iron Maiden Jean. The protagonist, being the meek simp he is, accepts the humiliation. But Morty decides he's not playing the damsel in distress today. He uses his laptop to summon Mosuke and breaks the barrier, proving technology beats religious fanaticism. A general brawl breaks out, with everyone summoning their avatars, but the Iron Maiden decides it's her time to shine. She steps out of her BDSM torture coffin and uses the spirit Mosh to trap everyone in a spiritual cage.
What's going on? I feel very tingly. What the?
But the sadomasochistic joy is short-lived because Zeke appears out of nowhere, controls the spirit of fire, and grabs Jean like she's a prize in a rigged claw machine. He threatens to turn the saint into a kebab if anyone moves, and to prove he isn't joking, sets the girl on fire right then and there, leaving everyone with the face of someone who realized they left the oven on. Iron Maiden Jean gets roasted to a crisp and retreats into her Iron Maiden, sending Lyserg into a nervous breakdown because his goddess just got clapped. Zeke's minions take advantage of the shock to begin a massacre of the X-Law's fodder. Bill, John, and Porf, names so generic even their own mothers would forget them, are brutally murdered one by one, while enduring flashbacks that literally no one cares about. Yo and the gang, stuck in the cage, decide that watching the slaughter in 4K isn't healthy entertainment and bust out of prison using all their accumulated furioku. To Marco's absolute surprise, the protagonist decides to save the guys who tried to kill him 5 minutes ago. Marco, with his suicidal martyr logic, says he'd rather die, but Yo ignores the drama. On the other side of the map, Silva tries to intervene, but Mickey Hisa shows up and kicks him square in the face, stating that the plan to take down Zeke is more important than saving fanatics. On the battlefield, Yo tries to 1v1 tank Zeke, dodging fire attacks with his giant spirit sword, but he's snatched up and released like a small fish not yet worth frying. Suddenly, the Iron Maiden wakes up from her post-burn nap and decides to open the gate of Babylon out of pure spite. The sky rips open into a massive vacuum, sucking up everything not nailed down. Yo screams for them to stop the madness, but the gate opens and starts pulling everyone's souls. However, the spirit of fire shows it has an insatiable appetite. Before the gate can close, it grabs the spirit Mosh and devours it like a crispy chicken wing.
Now that we're out, enjoy your feast.
Everyone wakes up in the real world dazed, while Zeke laughs in their faces, whispers something in Yo's ear, and leaves with a full stomach after turning a god-class spirit into an afternoon snack. Zeke's lackeys gather to lick their boss's boots, with Ramiro thanking him for not being fired despite his incompetence. Nikram brings a gift for Zeke, while Chokolov has a nightmare where he sees his master being cremated alive by the villain, waking up screaming in a cold sweat. Meanwhile, at the good guys' camp, despair reigns because Jean won't wake up. Elsewhere, Rio finds Lyserg crying again, this time not for the friends he betrayed, but because his new boss is in a coma. He shuns the fairy Chloe once more, proving he's the most ungrateful character in the show. Meanwhile, Horo finds a Dragon Ball-style power scouter and gets cocky with his 9,000 Furioku until he sees that Zeke has 1,250,000, making his own score look like pocket change. Basic math says they are screwed. Zeke decides to invade the Dobi village looking for the path to the holy ground, beating up the Dobi efficients like they're training dummies. Mickey Hisa tries to play the hero and intercept the villain, but ends up having his spirits devoured and his legs charred by the spirit of fire, serving only to send a message to Yo. When the group reunites and confirms that Zeke's power level is effectively a real-life cheat code, a mood of total defeat sets in. But Len, with an ego the size of China, decides this is the perfect moment to ignore the impending apocalypse and challenge Yo to a 1v1, because priorities were never this kid's strong suit. Len decides his inflated ego can no longer fit in the same room as him, and challenges Yo to a power-measuring duel, demanding the protagonist accept the 1v1. As they draw their spirits to see who has the biggest sword, Yo decides to shrink his, proving it's not the size that matters, but how you use the tool. Len gets pissed, thinking he's being underestimated, but soon realizes that compacting energy makes the thing much harder and more potent, learning the hard way that a small, dense oversoul hurts a lot more. After taking enough of a beating to learn the lesson, they stop their playground spat with a promise to get stronger, because apparently, the apocalypse won't wait for them to finish their bro talk. The group reaches the Forbidden Forest, where Silva tries to explain the way, but Colin warns that the Great Spirit is in another dimension, complicating life for anyone who skipped astral geography class. Morty, always acting like a digital stalker, uses his laptop to track Lyserg. Even with Anna telling him to chill, she decides to follow along anyway, probably to ensure no one does anything stupid without supervision. Meanwhile, Zeke and little Opacho stroll through the forest like they're on a Sunday picnic, while Yo and his troop are ambushed by Mohammed and Zhang Qing. Horo and Faust decide to tank the minions so the protagonist can move forward, while Rio and Chocolove stay behind to deal with the gothic mariachi Ramiro and the big guy Bill. Morty finally finds Lyserg spying on the X-Laws, who are about to commit collective suicide against Zeke. Lyserg, in a moment of lucidity, suggests that facing the villain is a bad idea, but the religious fanatics have their auto-sacrifice button toggled on. Zeke arrives, mocking their pathetic power levels, and when they try to attack, the Spirit of Fire turns their angels into barbecue with a single breath. Chris tries to play the mad scientist by throwing an oxygen-depleting grenade, thinking physics applies to a shaman god, but Zeke simply converts his spirit to the water element, proving he's playing with cheat codes enabled.
No, the demon still stands. How can it be? If his medium was destroyed,
I'll go.
The massacre continues as Zeke melts, pierces, and humiliates every member of the X-Laws while Lyserg watches, traumatized. When Yo finally arrives asking how many more souls need to die, Zeke sends his spirit to snack on the fallen. In a surge of despair, Chloe evolves using the remains of the destroyed angels, and Jean steps out of her torture box to give Lyserg a pat on the back, just as the ground begins to shake because the Great Spirit decided to show signs of life. Pillars of light sprout from the ground like a spiritual rave, guiding everyone to the Star Sanctuary. Zeke and his goons take the Express Light elevator, and the good guys team decides to follow because chasing psychopaths is their favorite hobby. Jean gives Lyserg a new medium and tells him to go make up for lost time. Meanwhile, Len and Rio are getting beaten down by Muhammad and Zhang Qing until Silva and Callan show up to try and stop Zeke's advance, only to be mocked by Zink and Nikram for being the shame of the Dobie family. Morty, with the sense of direction of a potato, thinks he's following Yo, but runs straight into Zeke, who takes the opportunity to bully the short kid, saying he's so useless, he's not even worth killing. In the middle of the general brawl, it's discovered that Zeke gave spiritual steroids to his followers via the tome of the Shaman. The problem is that Bill Burton's body can't handle that much power, and he literally explodes like a festive balloon full of meat, proving Zeke's quality control is non-existent. Morty is disgusted by the villain's coldness, who basically says that if the guy exploded, it's because he was weak. The battle remains frantic, with everyone summoning giant oversouls to overcompensate for other things. Faust arrives with his giant spirit to block attacks, turning the battlefield into a mixed salad of magic and violence. Far away, Grandma Kino and Grandpa Yome are preparing the 1080 beads in a lengthy ritual that they claim can seal Zeke, though everyone knows these old people plans never work as expected. Back in the action, Horo manages to defeat Ramiro, but is taken down by a giant Lego block named Brockenmeyer. When Luca tries to finish off the ice skater, Len steps in to block but gets caught in a fatal combo. Everyone watches in shock as Len's body, covered in blood, hits the ground like a punctured sack of potatoes, while Horo looks on in horror, realizing the immortal of the team might need a respawn that doesn't exist on this server. With Len turned into a human sieve and losing more blood than an extra in a horror movie, the situation spirals out of control. Faust goes into a total panic because ironically the necromancer doctor needs blood to heal, and the patient has already leaked most of it onto the floor. While Eliza tries to calm the hysterical doctor, Zeke's followers start lecturing about how their boss is the ideal of perfection, right after seeing a colleague explode from spiritual steroids. Yome appears in a flashback, narrating how Zeke was defeated 500 years ago, spoiling Anna's plan, which involves the giant beads and a lot of faith that the villain will fall for the same trick twice. Yo, meanwhile, deals with the Hanagumi girls, debuting his new spirit of Sword Over Soul and showing that he's done playing around. Near the Great Spirit, Zeke annihilates 3 divine guardians like he's swatting flies, proving the afterlife's security system is a joke. Back at the massacre of the Allies, when all seems lost and oversouls are breaking like cheap glass, Lyserg emerges with his new pendulum to save the day. The British boy decides to solo the entire opposing team using a buffed-up Chloe to defeat Lucifer, Zheng Qing, and slice Ramiro's spirit in half, proving he's finally stopped being the group's crybaby to become the MVP of the match. He throws himself in front of a fatal attack to protect his friends, falling to the ground ready to become a martyr. But since bad weeds never die, and those with plot armor even less so, Len rises from the dead and crushes Lucifer into the ground, dropping the cliché one-liner that he won't be defeated by lackeys. He takes down the rest of the enemies out of pure spite. Silva and Kallen find Yo, who just finished dispatching the Goth Girl team, and decide to join him. A friendship fest ensues with Lyserg being forgiven for being an ex-law traitor, Rio crying liters of manly happiness, and the group gathering to move forward. In the end, Anna grabs the newly charged 1080 beads and sends Temra and Pilika away, marching toward the final battle with the confidence of someone about to give the shamanic antichrist a beatdown with a necklace. While the pyromaniac villain Zeke reaches the VIP lounge where the Great Spirit is taking a nap, Yo and the Dobie officials run into the club's bouncers, 3 guardian spirits who are clearly not playing around. Our chill shaman tries to use his spirit sword over Soul, but the guardians dodge with the grace of Russian ballet dancers and take everyone down through pure humiliation. While Yo screams that he doesn't have time for this nonsense, June and Lee Pylon finally arrive where Len had just finished barbecuing Zeke's followers. Yo, being the tactical genius he is, attacks the Guardians again, and guess what? 0 damage, proving the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. But then his brain finally kicks into gear, and he realizes the NPC's AI is bugged. They don't attack unless you attack first. He tells Silva and Kallen to stop the friendly fire, asks the monsters for permission, and walks right past them like he owns the place, while Anna runs through the forest trying to find her missing fiancé. In the Great Spirit's private box, Zeke and little Apacho enjoy the panoramic view, while Morty continues his useless role as a professional voyeur. When Yo arrives, the mood gets heavier than a Sunday feast. Zeke asks, "What's up?" And while Len and the other extras struggle to get past the Guardians back there, a philosophical debate begins. Yo questions the idea of a shaman's only world. Zeke says it's for the good of the planet. That classic eco-terrorist talk. When the Spirit of Fire tries to grab Silva and Kallen to make a toast, Yo slices the monster's hand off, showing he's finally done playing. But Zeke doesn't even feel it. He trades a few blows with the protagonist and slams him to the ground, proving the power scaling is more unbalanced than online game matchmaking. Opacho comments that Yo got stronger, but that it's no use being a weak half, leaving Morty terrified of what that implies. Meanwhile, the back of the class crew finally defeats the first Guardians through a collective beatdown and advances, only for June and Lee Pylon to stay behind and take a licking from another beast. Zeke continues to humiliate Yo, asking if he's enjoying the beating, until Anna arrives, summoning Zenki and Koki to clear the area with the subtlety of a bulldozer, but then things get truly sinister. Zeke disarms Yo, drops the boy, and decides the foreplay is over. He thrusts his bare hand into Yo's chest, but not in the romantic way fanfics like. He rips the protagonist's soul out by force and swallows it whole like an olive, absorbing the boy into himself. Len, Anna, and the rest of the troupe arrive exactly at the moment Zeke finishes his spiritual cannibal meal, leaving the protagonist's fiancé screaming in absolute horror at the sight of her future husband becoming the villain's protein supplement. The funeral vibe sets in instantly as Anna and the others stare at Yo's empty shell lying on the floor. A mental highlight reel of his best moments begins, and little Morty falls to his knees crying, stating the obvious. His friend has kicked the bucket, but Zeke, with the sensitivity of an ice cube, drops the bombshell that Yo didn't die. He simply never existed, and his soul just returned home, in a bit of existentialist talk that would leave Nietzsche confused. The gang doesn't buy his barstool philosophy. They activate their big over souls and charge in with blood in their eyes, ignoring Silva's warnings not to fall for the bait. Obviously, Zeke repels everyone like flies, dodging Len's attacks with the ease of someone playing on God mode. Anna stands up, swears she won't forgive this nonsense, and everyone prepares to become BBQ as Zeke promises to burn their souls to a crisp. Meanwhile, Yo's soul is floating in an empty void, a psychedelic trip without the drugs, while his grandfather back at the homestead notices his grandson's aura has vanished. Zeke decides to humiliate them further. He hacks Anna's Shikigami system and takes control of Zenki and Koki, making the beasts attack their own mistress. Silva and Colin have to tank the damage to save the blonde.
Leave no trace of her behind.
The villain then decides to fly toward the Great Spirit to finish the job, while the controlled demons beat down Len and company. This is when the script miracle happens. Mosuke appears, gives Morty a pep talk, and the garden gnome pulls a giant hammer out of nowhere and smashes the demons, proving size doesn't matter. Morty screams for everyone to combine their powers, faints from exhaustion immediately after, but the team takes the opening and finishes the beasts. In the Great Beyond, Yo starts hearing voices from Zeke's haters of the past. In the real world, the Iceman and the Très Magnifique decide they are shamans too, and offer to help, which is cute, but useless. Len and the gang catch up to Zeke seconds before he starts eating the Great Spirit with the Spirit of Fire. The final strategy is put into play. Horo freezes Zeke, Rio, and Lai Serg hold the Fire Beast in a group hug, and Anna begins the 1080 beads ritual to seal the villain for good. It looks like it's going to work. Zeke is immobilized, and Anna tells everyone to attack with the power of friendship and the memory of Yo. But then Zeke lets out a sadistic little smile, breaks Anna's seal like it's cheap flea market jewelry, and leaves everyone looking like idiots. Anna falls to her knees in shock. Len tries to keep his tough guy act, saying it's not over, but Zeke sends a blast of fire into everyone's faces to show who's the boss of this joint. The situation goes from bad to worse, with Zeke distributing flames and pushing everyone back like he's using a modded leaf blower. Len tries to attack again and is tossed to the ground like a rag doll. Meanwhile, the Iceman and Très Magnifique extras are ambushed by Zeke's followers, because when it rains, it pours. Yo's grandfather is in a panic because the 1080 rosary turned to dust and his grandson hasn't returned. Morty wakes up, sees Rio taking a beating and getting back up, and decides to maintain the delusional optimism that everything will be fine. Staring at Yo's lifeless body, Zeke calls everyone idiots, says they don't have a chance, and asks if they really want to avenge Yo that badly. Cue the cliche motivational speech where they say Yo didn't die because he lives in their hearts, blah blah blah. Zeke gets irritated by all the toxic positivity, and when he tries to attack in a rage, Yo's soul wakes up in the void. Suddenly, the protagonist's body in the real world stands up, surprising even Anna, who was probably already calculating the life insurance payout. Everyone feels Yo's aura return, and the boy glares at a pissed off Zeke, takes his headphones back from Anna, and says he's going to pick up where he left off. Zeke asks how the hell he came back. Yo says it's because that's where he belongs, and Opacho starts getting worried about her master's murderous vibe. Team Spartacus shows up to help the extras.
Explain it to me. We're thinking of defying Zeke, but if we shouldn't, we'd like to know why.
While Yo and the gang try to hold off the villain, Zeke teleports to the ground and Opacho makes the mistake of asking why he's so angry. Zeke gaslights her, saying he's not angry at all, but his face says otherwise, scaring poor Opacho into running away crying, officially ending this toxic friendship. Zeke, now with a bruised ego and even more rage, rushes to the Great Spirit and commands the Spirit of Fire to start eating the entity from the inside. The Fire Beast changes color and turns gold, looking like it just bought a legendary pay-to-win skin. Everyone wonders if he's already become the Shaman King. Zeke tests his new power and pierces through the gang's oversouls like wet paper. Yo tries to land a punch, but his oversoul is also instantly incinerated. Zeke says they need to taste more of hell, but Yo stands up, stubborn as a mule, creates his oversoul again, and charges toward the golden Spirit of Fire that just emerged from the Great Spirit, ready for the final round of suicidal brawling while the audience watches with their mouths agape. While Yo tries to land a hit on Zeke, who is now glowing brighter than a rapper on payday, the entire useless population of the Dobie village decides the best contribution to the apocalypse is to watch from a distance like it's a reality show finale. Zeke warns he's going to kill everyone, but Sharona, with the confidence of someone who wouldn't last 2 seconds in combat, screams that Yo will win. The villain dodges attacks with the ease of someone playing in creative mode and declares that it was worth waiting 1,000 years to become a golden god, while the rest of the cast decides to use their special ability, sending positive vibes praying, because actual fighting is too much work. The Spirit of Fire grabs the protagonist like a floppy doll and slams him down, but Amidamaru saves the day before Yo becomes mash. Zeke decides he's done playing and unleashes a family-sized flamethrower, forcing the protagonist to tank the damage with his face. The villain cranks up the heat to ensure not even bones are left, calling Yo's existence useless, which honestly is a valid argument considering his track record. But then, shonen script magic happens. Everyone, from Len to extra number 47, starts believing really hard. Feeling the power of friendship entering him without a filter, Yo creates a gargantuan oversoul, proving that size does matter. He starts dodging attacks based on pure main character energy, which leaves Zeke foaming at the mouth because he hates people who rely on friends to clear a level. Yo drops the speech about how no one wins alone and in a swift move slices the Spirit of Fire in half like warm butter. And then, in an editing cut that would get any editor fired, everyone wakes up in the desert. The Great Spirit is gone, Zeke is gone, and Goldva announces that the Shaman fight has been suspended for reasons of, we don't know how to end this. It's the ultimate anti-climax. Life goes on as if the world hadn't almost ended. Lyserg leaves to read books. Marco and Jean stare into space with blank looks. At home, Anna praises Yo's cooking but gets triggered when she finds out he'd bought it pre-made, proving his biggest fear isn't Zeke, it's his fiancée. Morty narrates philosophically while Rio rides his bike feeling like an easy rider, and Horo and Pilika discover the tractor wasn't broken, it just ran out of gas, confirming the family intelligence is limited. Chocolove tries to make a joke and realizes he's still not funny, maintaining character consistency. Len shows up at Yo's house pretending he was forced by his sister to bring stuff, but everyone knows he just missed his bestie. Everything seems beautiful. Opacho looks at a shooting star in a poetic scene, until Yo's Oracle Bell receives a message, proving the writer forgot to turn off the ringer before the credits rolled.